situation.
No one else ever did, but
Not for that.
No,
I'm talking about emergency situations for why
the
you
stuff
have the
that
tariffs.
seeps out of the cesspool of out of the swamp. It never ceases to amaze.
Exactly.
People
But
think.
thank you.
There's an election coming up in a year and a half. Someone said that yesterday. I swear to God. Was it McCarthy? Someone said that.
They said that on like November 12th.
The election coming up in 2 years minus 1 day. Today. Coming up, an update on some of the sectors on the move and safe havens that are seeing some activity this morning. First, check out the movers in the NASDAQ. Spark Box coming right back.
At Capital Group, we see active ETFs differently. We collaborate, designing them to remain strong, preparing them to weather the ups and downs of the market. That's what sets our active ETFs apart, so they can be rooted at the core of a portfolio. They're meticulously crafted to endure. Capital Group, actively different, active ETFs.
At Interactive Brokers, independent RIAs work with the best research and trading tools designed to help them outperform the markets. Meet them at Interactive Brokers Investors Marketplace for advisors. Advisors at Interactive Brokers keep all they earn on our low-cost platform, with no ticket fees or custody charges, low margin rates, and high interest earned on idle cash. To get better results, get a better platform. The best informed investors choose Interactive Brokers.
When logic bends, when certainties shatter, when left is right and right is left, which way do you turn? Go beyond the headlines. A trusted global perspective. The Economist. Know which way is up.
This is the one. She fixes, she manages, she perfects. Because maintaining this space transports her to this space. The industrial-grade product you need. Call, click, or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ever worry that you're drinking too much? Take back control with Or Health. Or Health provides access to medication proven to help. A daily pill to drink less, or to quit drinking altogether. Text CNBC to 710-710 to learn more.
Dog made a bad? Uh-oh. There's a good way to handle it. Poof! Odor on the pet? Ooh. There's a poof for that, too! Housebound pets?
I'm home.
Come home to no mess and happiness! Because there's a poof for that! Stinky washables? Ugh. There's even a poof for that!
Yay!
See? There's a poof for every problem! Get poof at Walmart. If it's not poof, it stinks!
Decking and railing that's ready for anything you throw at it, even John's 40th. Trex, performance engineered for your life outdoors.
Toothless, let's take her down gently.
How to Train Your Dragon is the cinematic ride of the summer. This is how you reimagine a classic.
Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile!
How to Train Your Dragon, rated PG.
Get to Dom Chu. He's looking at some of the sectors and stocks on the move this morning. Hey, Dom.
All right, so Joe, Becky, in the wake of the Israeli airstrikes on Iran, we wanted to give you a check on some of the safe haven trades that may react a little bit more in times of geopolitical risk and tension. Interestingly enough, vis-a-vis the oil conversation you guys just had, that is where the real epicenter is. We are not seeing a lot of market activity. There is some activity in those safe havens. The dollar is bid to the tune of 0.5%. The dollar index is at 98.5 right now. COMEX gold futures at 34.41. We got as high as 34.67, so it's about a 1% gain there overall. Meanwhile, yields on both the 10-year and the 30-year are ticking slightly higher, although in context, the 10-year note yield was around 4.41% before much of the impact of those Israeli airstrikes. It got down as low as 4.34, so ticking off those levels. So that's the safe haven trade status on the macro side of things. Maybe not out of the realm of reason here is the idea that defense-related stocks could be also performing well in this environment. If you look at some of the pre-market gainers here in L3 Harris, RTX, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, even the iShares U.S. Aerospace and Defense ETF are up anywhere from about 3.5% to 4.5% for the stocks themselves. The ETF up about just 0.75%. So keep an eye on the defense complex overall as well. And then just to kind of put a point on what else is happening right now, Boeing and GE Aerospace, in light of the ongoing investigation for the Air India crash out in Asia right now, Boeing shares following a drop yesterday are down about 1% today. GE Aerospace was down about 2% in trading, off about nearly 2% in trading so far today. So the Boeing and GE Aerospace trade also in focus as well. Becky, Joe, I'll send things back over to you guys.
Okay, Don, thank you very much.
All right, coming up, got a live report from Tel Aviv, and Dan Senor, former foreign policy advisor in the Bush administration, is going to tell us why the Israeli strike may be bigger than just attempting to wipe out Iran's nuclear program. Squawk Box returns in just a moment.
The FBI calls it house stealing, the latest scam where a cyber thief transfers the title of your home out of your name and steals your hard-earned equity.
It's roughly 60 to 90 days for that person to even figure out that they're the victim of this crime. You start getting foreclosure notices, and you realize you've got 4 mortgages on your house that you didn't even know existed.
Unfortunately, it's on you to protect yourself. You might already be a victim. Check your title status now at HomeTitleLock.com.
What if you could invest in a future where skin cancer treatment is non-invasive and relatively painless? Medicus Pharma's groundbreaking solution delivers chemotherapy directly to the tumor site, offering a mostly painless alternative to invasive surgeries. With the skin cancer treatment market expected to exceed $20 billion by 2030, Medicus is poised to meet the demand for cost-effective, non-surgical options. Now advancing Phase 2 studies. Medicus Pharma, leading the charge in skin cancer innovation.
At Avocado, luxury isn't just comfort. It's consciousness. It's craftsmanship. It's choosing better. Inspired by the beauty of our planet, we design for the dreamers. Every stitch, thoughtfully placed to elevate your sleep. Crafted for the way you rest. Made with the finest natural and organic materials. Sustainably sourced. Meticulously crafted. Because true luxury isn't just how it feels, it's how it's made. Discover our full line of luxury mattresses at avocadomattress.com.
You've asked me that 3 times already.
I did? This is exactly how it started with Mom.
Worried about your brain health? Cerefolin Brain Wellness has a dual-action formula that slows cognitive decline while improving memory, focus, and concentration. Those taking Cerefolin Brain Wellness experienced a slower rate of brain shrinkage. Now also available without a prescription at Cerefolin.com and Amazon.
It changed my mind.
Neurologist recommended Cerefolin Brain.
Introducing Old Navy Active. New styles, new colors, new stretch, new feels. Old Navy, new moves.
Excuse me, are you shopping online while standing in line?
Yeah.
Me too. I just bought a croquet set using PayPal.
Cool.
And PayPal lets me choose how I pay.
Oh no, you're not gonna sing again, are you?
You can pay your own way.
Here we go again.
I use PayPal to buy this ticket, and I'm paying it off in 4 payments. No fees, no interest.
You know what else has no interest? Me.
Pay in store, pay online, pay over time. Don't just pay, PayPal.
At Ace, however you grill, we've got the perfect one for you. Because only your local Ace has all the best brands in one place, like Weber, Big Green Egg, Traeger, and Blackstone. That sounds pretty perfect.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
President Trump just posting, 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have, perhaps, a second chance. 20 minutes ago, a spokesman for the Israeli army said that airstrikes on Iran are continuing at this hour. NBC's Matt Bradley joins us right now from Tel Aviv. Matt, hello. What can you tell us at this point?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this is continuing. We're continuing to get word that more and more of these targets are being hit by Israeli air forces, and we actually have been seeing on Israeli television images of what they're describing as Mossad agents inside Iran. Now, we haven't been able to verify that necessarily ourselves, but it is very interesting that it looks like this is a plan for several weeks. And this was an effort that has unfolded ever since about 2 or 3 a.m. this morning. Now, Iran has vowed to respond, and they already have retaliated. They fired about 100 drones at Israel, most of them swatted out of the sky by Israeli air defenses before they even reached Israeli airspace. So, as you mentioned, we heard from Donald Trump. This really does look as though this might very much interfere with Donald Trump's plan to try to get to some sort of deal to curb Iran's nuclear program. There had been set to be the 6th round of negotiations coming up on Sunday in Oman. Now, the Iranians have said they won't be sending a delegation on Sunday, so it looks as though Trump's effort to try to get this deal done, as he said in his Truth Social post this morning, has been scuttled by Israel's actions.
Matt, we've heard some reports about drones that Israel has taken out, drones coming from Iran. What's the feeling there, where you are, and what's the sense of just how people are going about things? We know there's a state of emergency there.
Yeah, that's right. Earlier this morning, the Israeli government did tell people to stay by their safe rooms, which are in just about every Israeli home and in public places as well. I was walking around this morning on my way here, and, you know, it doesn't look like a regular Friday morning. Clearly, people had taken the message. They're not walking about, but it's very calm here. I did see some families out and about this morning, and the Israeli government just a couple of hours ago lifted their recommendation that people remain near those safe rooms. So it looks as though, as far as the Israeli government is concerned, that for the public, most of the danger is now over. But of course, Israeli airspace still closed, as are airspaces throughout the region.
Matt Bradley from NBC. Thank you, Matt.
For more on the latest developments, get to Dan Senor, our friend, former foreign policy advisor in the Bush administration, host of the podcast, called me back. We've talked a lot about this over the years, actually, Dan. I ask you in a little bit different way. I mean, you can just present the facts, obviously, but we both believe that, and I think the president believes Iran, and obviously Israel believes Iran should never have a nuclear weapon. We've been hearing they're getting closer and closer and closer. I don't know whether a deal was possible, but in some respects, should we view this as almost welcome, that this is going to come to a head and it's going to be decided before Iran actually has the bomb?
Yeah, Joe, the concern, of course, was as Iran was getting closer and closer and closer, that removed optionality for Israel, because any operation Israel would take a lot of lead time, a lot of preparation. So as you know, for the longest time, we heard that the term was breakout time. How long does Iran have to break out to a nuclear weapons capability? Meaning it has all the ingredients, all the tools, everything it needs. It's perfecting its processes. But when the supreme leader says go, start, like build the activate the program. That doesn't mean launch a weapon, but activate the capability. So we now can tell the world, we Iran have a nuclear weapon, which means that creates an umbrella over the region where no one can ever respond to Iran, and Iran would hold the region and a large part of the world hostage. Once Iran can activate that, they go to breakout. That's the window that has been shrinking for some time. It was years. Then it was months. I remember, Joe, being on your show over the last few years, and when Prime Minister Netanyahu would come to the joint session of Congress back in 2015, there was a concern that the breakout time was shrinking to months. Then it was weeks, and now I'm hearing from Israeli sources it was even getting to days. So once they're in ability to have the capacity to activate in a matter of days, that just Israel's losing all its optionality to take it out, and they clearly had as someone put it to me, a U.S. administration that was somewhere between allowing and supporting, meaning the only debate was whether or not the U.S. was going to be actively involved or just give Israel the green light. But in no time were they dealing with an administration that's been in power since January, it's been in office since January, that was going to stop it, that was going to put up a red light. So when all those factors lined up, which is they had an administration that was allowing Israel to do what it needed to do, and the breakout, the race to breakout was just days, maybe weeks away. Israel had to do it.
Allowing and supporting somewhere in between. That's a good way of putting it. I can just remember, Dan, when you were on and we were talking, the last time that I won't call it an opening, but there was conflict broke out between Iran and Israel, and then Iran, responded with what didn't seem to be a very big response, and then it was said, both sides sort of said, okay, we're done. And I wouldn't say disappointment's not the right word, but this had to be taken care of at some point. And when it wasn't going to happen then, it's like, okay, if not now, if not then, when are you actually going to grab the bull by the horns and make sure that this doesn't happen? And no one, welcome's the wrong word. No one is happy that this is happening, but the world is a tough place. And already I'm seeing certain politicians say it's a reckless move and it's this and it's that. How is it reckless when the very existence of Israel is at stake?
Well, let me just refer to something you just said a moment ago, which was the operation back in October. So there were two operations that Israel conducted against Iran, one in April of 24 and the other one in October of 24. What was striking to me about the one in October of 24 is about a third of the Israeli Air Force was deployed, even more, a higher percentage of the Israeli Air Force was deployed last night and will be over the next couple of days. But in October of 24, about a third of the Israeli Air Force was deployed. And the Israelis I was speaking to said, look, we've taken out all of their, most, if not all of their S-300s, which are their air defense capabilities, their capacity to, kind of dominate the sky, if you will, from the ground in Iran. Israel had taken those out. Those are not easy to repair, and they're not easy to replenish. And once Israel had done that back in October, as one guest on my podcast put it, Rich Goldberg, he said, the Ayatollah has no clothes. Iran is totally naked. So now it's just a matter of when Israel wants to do the big operation. But that October operation created a lot of space and time for Israel to do what it did last night, and I think it will be doing over the next few days. To your question, I've got to tell you, I've looked at some of these responses from some members of the U.S. Senate, Jack Reed, Chris Murphy. They're shocking. They're really shocking. Does anybody believe that Iran inching this close to a nuclear weapon, that would actually bring peace and stability to the world? That would forget about to Israel. What about to the Middle East? What about our other allies in the Middle East? What about to Europe? What about to the broader world? I mean, if Israel, here's one way to think about it, Joe. Israel was criticized for taking out Nasrallah and Hezbollah, which was Iran's most important ally. Israel was pressured for years to reach some kind of peace deal with Assad's regime in Syria. All right. Israel was pressured for many years to give up the Golan Heights. Israel was, what I'm describing here right now is basically the proxy system that surrounded Israel. And Israel systematically took out Iranian proxies. The regime in Syria fell, the Assad regime, after being in power for 53 years. Iran was at its weakest moment. This is actually the most responsible and safest time to do what Israel's doing, partly because the whole system of Iran's has been being broken down over the last few months. And if you look at the people who've been criticizing what Israel's doing every step of the way, the pager attack, taking out Nasrallah, taking out Hezbollah's offensive capabilities, now taking out Iran, every step of the way, the critics that have been saying Israel's been making a mistake with this quote-unquote escalation. Just imagine where we would be today if Israel had not been doing these things. And again, ask it also not just from Israel's perspective, but from the U.S. perspective.
With that logic, if you don't get it to Fordo, or however you pronounce Fordo, if you don't get to Fordo, I said Fordo, but if you don't get to Fordo, you could call that. If you're going to do it, you need to finish it, don't you? Is there going to how is this going to happen? Is a bunker buster going on? Are we going to supply that?
So Fordo is. You're right to focus on Fordo, which is where one of the major nuclear sites is, and really hardened, deepened, and hardened in underground and in kind of a mountainous area that's very hard to penetrate. It sounds like Israel has not hit it yet. I agree with you. If Israel does not take it out or do serious damage to it, I don't think this operation will have been considered a complete success. That said, I think if you look at the sequencing of what Israel's doing here, right? So what did they do in the first wave of the operation? They completely caught the personnel that runs Iran's military, Iran's security capabilities, the leaders of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the chief of staff of the Iranian army, and other leaders of the Iranian army, key nuclear scientists. So they were the personnel, and they took out the personnel. This is actually very similar to when Israel took out Nasrallah and Hezbollah, where they go after key personnel first, disrupt communications, so it completely disrupts and distorts the command and control. So suddenly you're some official in Fordo, and you're like, well, what do I do when they come for us? Or what should I be doing now to respond? And I don't want to oversimplify it, but suddenly all the people that military official would call are confused. Communications are confused. The leadership at the top is either not reachable or been killed. They've been taken out in their homes in the first wave in the surprise attack. So they were taking care of the personnel first, then hitting the infrastructure. And I got to believe that hitting Fordo and hitting the infrastructure at Fordo is going to happen. But of course, none of this could happen. None of the infrastructure could be hit until the key personnel was taken out. And that's why doing in these waves was very important.
They're wrapping us as usual, Dan, but we talked earlier, does Israel have the capability to do that now? Some Israeli generals say they do, others say they don't, that it would take one of these U.S.-supplied bunker busters. Would we supply it? Have we supplied it?
I don't know if we have supplied it, Joe, but I just will say this. If you look at President Trump's statement, if you look at the interview he gave last night to Bret Baier, I think he is basically signaling that he gave Iran 60 days to try diplomacy. They played a rope-a-dope. They dragged things out, and he's basically working with Israel on this. I mean, he's not actively involved. I want to be clear, but he's not stopping Israel. And so, read into that what you want. I think if Israel is going to do Fordo, whether it needs U.S. capabilities or not, I think it's going to have what it needs.
Okay. All right, Dan, thanks. We'll leave
Good to be with you guys.
And, all right, see you again soon. Thank you.
When we come back, we'll have much more on the market reaction to the events unfolding in the Middle East. As we head to a break right now, check out how the Dow movers are taking place this morning. Chevron, that stock up by about 2.6%. Apple and Verizon up just fractionally. Squawk Box will be right back.
How will you shape the future of industrial manufacturing with confidence? How will you optimize your supply chain and keep pace with data-driven manufacturing?
Winners in the market are using data and digital technologies, carving out greater value within the overall value chains.
EY teams are rooted in places where products are made, bringing insights from professionals who understand industrials, the sectors they supply, and trends driving the industry forward. EY, shape the future with confidence.
Down, up, right, left, inside, out. Sometimes it's hard to make sense from nonsense. Go beyond the headlines. A trusted global perspective. The Economist. Know which way is up.
Thanks for walking us through the plan.
Have fun with Lizzie this summer.
Doors connect us to what's important. A dedicated Fidelity advisor can help you open those doors. Backed by a team of specialists, they'll help you build a personalized investment strategy. Doors were meant to be opened.
Searching for the perfect underwear? Tommy John combines innovation with excellence. It's softer than cotton, with up to 4 times the stretch of competing brands. Tommy John, because if you dress to the nines, your underwear should be a 10. Go to TommyJohn.com now for 20% off your first order.
At AG1, one of our values is the continuous pursuit of excellence. For over 15 years, we have upgraded AG1, adding ingredients that the research said would support nutrient gaps and gut health. It's time for the next generation of AG1. AG1 Next Gen has launched with upgraded B vitamins and probiotic blends backed by multiple gold standard clinical trials. Our customers deserve the best, and the best just got much better.
It is amazing. It used to have a collagen, used to have a probiotic, a green juice. I replaced it all with this Arma colostrum. If you don't know what colostrum is, it is amazing, but it is a bioactive whole food. It has all the essential nutrients you need for your skin, your gut, energy, focus, mood, performance, your hair, like immune system. It strengthens, supports all of that. I think the first thing I noticed was the energy and recovery that it had after workout, but if you want to try it, we'll try armor.com.
It is my honor to welcome the hardest working software on television to the public market.
And there have been 3 chapters in the company's life. This one is the one I'm most excited about.
If the current crop keeps going higher and higher still, and we keep having so much froth in the rest of the market, then we are indeed headed to the danger zone. Not yet, but soon.
Mad Money, weeknight 6 Eastern and streaming on CNBC+.
The results of the CNBC NRF Retail Monitor for May just released. Let's get to Steve Leisman. He has more on this. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Becky. Consumer spending growth slowed in May, apparent payback from strong April outlays that were propelled by consumers pulling forward purchases ahead of tariffs. And consumers, of course, could now face new challenges after developments overnight in the Middle East. The CNBC NRF Retail Monitor, it's powered by real credit card spending data from Affinity Solutions, showed a 0.5% gain for the headline data. Pretty good. That excludes auto and gas, and that's down from 0.7 in April. But when you take out restaurants, spending dropped to 0.2%, pretty weak there, from 0.9 in April. Year-over-year rates remain positive, but both are down from April. 8 of 12 sectors were up, led by digital products and restaurants and bars, but apparel also increased, not showing much tariff effect there, along with sporting goods and hobbies. Those are a sign that discretionary spending continues to be relatively in pretty good shape. Declines came from gas prices, but also furniture and electronics. Those are 2 areas that could be showing some tariff impact. The NRF writing in its commentary, while momentum remains, the nature of consumer spending is shifting as caution from uncertainty increases. Consumers are trading down rather than reducing spending. The outlook for spending would otherwise remain bright. You have high levels of employment, decent wage gains. It remains to be seen whether May was just payback and strength returns in June, and if tariffs have a broader effect in the months ahead. Now, of course, the attacks on Iran will be another factor for consumer sentiment. Lower gas prices were a big positive for consumers, both for sentiment and, of course, for prices offsetting some of the gains we saw in the overall index. Becky?
Yeah, Gary Cohn was just here yesterday as the markets were celebrating these lower than expected inflationary prints we got both on Wednesday and Thursday of this week, talking about how he talks to Walmart and their managers will tell you that if somebody fills up with gas thinking it's going to be $80 at the gas pump, it turns out it's only $62. They'll take that $18 and go inside and spend it immediately at the stores. So higher oil prices are a concern, but we'll see if it hangs in there. Halima Croft earlier this morning said that the market's gotten burned. Oil traders have gotten burned in the past thinking that some of these geopolitical issues will keep oil prices higher, and that hasn't been the case, at least to date.
Yeah, usually these things snap back pretty quickly. And of course, it's a new era with so much U.S. production. I think if I had to guess, the market is trading right now on the fear of a wider conflict, one that could disrupt more broadly oil supplies from the Middle East. And of course, there was an anticipation among some that perhaps Iran would return to global markets. So that's an issue as well. But typically, these things have been relatively short-lived, and in the era of U.S. domestic production, maybe even shorter than that.
Steve, thank you.
Pleasure.
It's 8 a.m. on the East Coast, and you're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernan. Andrew is off today. Global markets reacting to Israel's strikes on Iran, targeting nuclear facilities, ballistic missile factories, and Iranian military leadership. Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard said that its top commander was killed and a key nuclear enrichment site was damaged, but no radiation contamination has occurred. Israel is working to bring down drones that Iran launched in retaliation. In the last hour, an Israeli army spokesman said that the attacks were still underway. We'll have more on this in just a moment. As for the U.S. markets, the futures this morning are lower, although off the lowest sessions we've seen. We were down by more than 500 points earlier this morning. Now the Dow is indicated off by about 416. S&P futures are down as well. They're off by 0.9%, and the Nasdaq is the biggest decliner on a percentage basis. It's down by just over 1.1%. Also, take a look at what's been happening with the Treasury markets. At least for most of the complex, you're looking at slightly higher yields. The 5 years at 396, the 2 years at 391, 10 years flat at 435, and then oil prices, as we've mentioned, spiked overnight, up by about 14% on the initial news. You now see that WTI is up by just under 8% to $73.40 a barrel. ICE Brent is at $74.39.
For more on these market moves, let's get to Mike Santoli at the NYSE. Mike, someday it might be different when something like this happens, and it could be long-lasting and horrific and terrible. But how many times, whether it was either one of the initial moves that we made on Iraq, I can remember where I was and what I was doing, and it seems like it's going to be major for across the board, for oil, for markets, for everything. It never seems to turn out that way or last that long. But one of these times, maybe it will.
Yeah, I would say certainly rarely it's been the case. I mean, and that probably explains, Joe, why while it was a sharp reaction in global markets, very well contained, especially considering the starting point. If you look at the S&P 500, the SPY index fund here, we were at a multi-month high, had very strong couple of weeks. And actually, we're up week to date ahead of this. It looks like we're going to back off here just below the 6,000 level. That would be equivalent to 600 for the ETF. And I would say, you go back to, even last month's high, it's like, 59, 50-ish right there would be no big deal. So we're in a market where it's kind of built up a little bit of a cushion. The trend has definitely become better. But you see things like the volatility index perking above 20. Market's going to be on alert a little bit. A few things I would look for is to see if, let's say, some of the big NASDAQ stocks start to outperform, which are considered to be kind of insulated from a lot of issues. But so far, really not changing a whole lot in terms of the overall trend structure here. Take a look at one dynamic that's been notable, which is the outperformance of global developed market stocks relative to the U.S. This is obviously very much a catch-up move from multiple years of U.S. outperformance. The EFA ETF is all developed markets outside the U.S. And, they're curling lower a little bit here, too, but from a stronger position. So we'll see if any of that rebalancing happens. We're not seeing a flight to safety response, really, in Treasuries, although the dollar is getting a little bit of a bounce. Wanted to take a look at a 5-year chart of oil versus gold. In theory, both oil and gold maybe get a bump on this news overnight. But you see how fascinating it is that from different paths, they've kind of landed at the same spot. This is oil during the Russia-Ukraine invasion, obviously blasting above their prior range. And I think one benefit and one reason that the equity markets can handle this is oil's been depressed, right? So it's popping from this very benign level. It's obviously, certainly inflation adjusted well lower than it's been in recent years when we were in the $75 WTI range. So gold, again, has been strong, but really trending in that way, but not necessarily in kind of a panic buying type of way, guys.
And once again, Bitcoin is going the opposite way.
Exactly.
So if it's digital gold, it's digital NASDAQ is what it is, I think.
There it is.
Yep, thanks.
All right, joining us right now with reaction to Israel's airstrikes on Iran, Michael O'Hanlon, who is the Director of Foreign Policy Research at Brookings. He's also the Philip H. Knight Chair in Defense and Strategy. And Mike, your thoughts on what we saw overnight? There was some indication that we could be seeing something happening in the Middle East, certainly, but maybe this was more than some had anticipated.
Hi, Becky. Well, it's striking news and obviously ongoing. Multiple days of additional attack expected. I'm intrigued as to what Israel thinks it can accomplish around the Fordo site. As you know, that's the deep underground nuclear enrichment facility that, as far as we know so far, has not yet been struck. And without effective attacks against that, Israel may be really only accomplishing a delaying action here, especially given Iran's likely reaction, which would be to withdraw from any cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so I'll be intrigued. I was wondering if Israel had a special forces raid in mind for that site. If they had such a plan, they presumably would have started with that, not carried it out later on. So that's one big question I've got. But I'm not surprised by the efficiency and the effectiveness of the attack so far against some of the sites and against some of the key leadership. And you would expect that kind of excellence from the Israeli armed forces.
We brought that question up several times today, Mike. Why, if you have the ability to do something with Fordo, where most of those centrifuges are now centered for Iran, that's the one that's buried about half a mile underground. If you had the ability to do it, why not do it now?
Well, I'm not sure they do have the ability to do it. And I've heard some commentary on your show this morning that I'm not sure I fully agree with, not from you, but from other guests, about whether Israel really has this kind of bunker busting capability. And many people were skeptical that Israel would carry out this attack more or less on its own or completely on its own, lacking such capabilities, as well as lacking the ability to sustain air operations over many hundreds of miles the way that the United States could. Now, they've proven already they can do pretty well in the air, even so far from home. So I guess they solved that piece. But I don't know that they have the bunker busting capability to get down hundreds of meters into rock. And frankly, I'm not sure how well we would do with that mission. We would probably do pretty well. But the whole idea of Fordo was to be insulated against this kind of attack. And so I'm dubious that Israel is going to get it.
That leads to the questions of what the United States will do next. And President Trump has been fairly active on Truth Social this morning. One post that he said is that, you know, the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far. Israel has a lot of it, with much more to come. He's also said that this is what he warned Iran. He gave them 60 days. This is day 61, and this is what happens next. How will Iran react to that, do you think? And do they have a chance to get them back to the table to try and reach an agreement?
Well, I hope so on the latter question, but it's going to be tough. I think Iran's reaction will be twofold. One, they will have to do something, at least in their own minds, they have to do something violent in reply. And we know they've tried multiple approaches, and many of their options are not very good. But I still think they'll feel the need to do something. And it may look like some of their old-fashioned anti-civilian truck bombing kind of stuff. It may be an attempt to assassinate Israeli politicians around the world. I don't know. I think they'll feel like they need to do something. And I hope they won't, but I expect they will. Second, the big question long-term is, what about their nuclear program going forward? Again, I'm dubious that Israel is going to achieve a completely disarming strike. And even if Israel did, Iran would have the ability to start to rebuild its centrifuge capabilities in locations that perhaps we don't find out about. Bear in mind that it took some good luck and Iranian dissident groups for us to learn about the second nuclear site 20 years ago. So you can build these sites sometimes and get away with it clandestinely. And I think Israel has to expect that that will be Iran's recourse. So it's going to be hard for us to get to a new nuclear deal, but I think that should be the priority, as my colleague and friend Ken Pollack argued this morning in foreignaffairs.com.
I guess part of what they accomplished is taking out some of these nuclear scientists. I don't think I'd want to be an Iranian nuclear scientist, knowing that the Israelis and potentially others would be targeting you on some of these issues. The other part of the question, though, is when Iran retaliates, will it be only against Israel, or will they try and retaliate against U.S. military assets? Will they try and retaliate against Saudi Arabia or other nations that they think, even though they've condemned it, must have allowed them to fly over their airspace?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And I think that Iran, if I had to guess, which is always dangerous, predicting about the future is not the best thing to do on live television, but I don't think Iran will strike the United States with any vehemence. There's a chance they'll feel the need to do something symbolic, maybe not even risking loss of life, I don't know, against a facility or something, just to show their displeasure and their belief that we are Israel's best friend. But I don't know that they really want to invite a major American retaliation. So that would be my guess, but it's a close call in their mind, I would think. And then in terms of what they can really do against the Israelis, I don't know. They can certainly try harder than they have been to conduct assassinations or terrorist strikes around the world that would target, Jewish facilities like in Argentina in the 1990s. Remember that case long ago? Or some other location like that that's not as well protected as many sites would be inside of Israel. That's another option they've got. But I think they will feel the need to do something dramatic and violent, and then think hard about the nuclear option going forward.
Mike, thank you. Michael
Thank you,
Hanlon.
Becky.
Coming up, House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence member Raja Krishnamurthy coming right up. And then later, Goldman Sachs Vice Chair Robert Kaplan on what the situation in the Middle East means for what the Fed is likely to be considering. We'll be right back.
I'm Tony Steen, digital strategist at AmericanEagle.com. After Kansas City Steaks experienced declining traffic and conversion rates, they came to us primed for online growth. We solve digital challenges like this all the time. By leveraging an omni-channel digital marketing strategy, KansasCitySteaks.com attracted new customers and significantly increased ROI. For complete website and digital marketing solutions, go to AmericanEagle.com.
This is the one who keeps it moving. He stocks the right parts and knows just where to find them. Because this is about more than business. The industrial grade products you need. Call, click, or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
At Public, the high yield cash account's a no-brainer. I know my money's working hard for me, and I know I can access it anytime I need it. It's very simple. Better rates mean faster growth, and that's exactly what I need.
Food is Gina's passion, but diabetes threatened to take that all away. With Dexcom G7, Gina learned how different foods affect your sugar levels in real time, so she doesn't have to choose between the foods that she loves and her health.
When logic bends, when certainties shatter, when left is right and right is left, which way do you turn? Go beyond the headlines. A trusted global perspective. The Economist. Know which way is up.
Introducing CNBC Plus, the new streaming platform from the #1 source in business news. Watch live or on demand. Access any market, anytime, anywhere. Start streaming. Go to cnbc.com/plus now.
Was that necessary?
No, neither is a blown weekend. With Paycom, employees do their own payroll, so you can fix problems before they become problems. Get Paycom and make the unnecessary
NetCredit is here to say yes, even when other lenders won't. Apply online in minutes and get funds deposited the next business day or sooner. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
Iran's Noor News saying that 78 were killed, 329 injured in Israeli attacks on residential areas in Tehran. Joining us now, Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy. He's the ranking member of the China Select Committee and a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which is in charge of oversight of the Intelligence Committee. And it's good to see you, Congressman. In the past, you've been a pretty staunch defender of Israel. I'm quoting you from a former, when there was some other, you were commenting on a response that Iran had done to Israel, I think it was back in October, and you said Israel has a right to defend itself at all times, especially against an Iranian regime, which continues even now to seek Israel's destruction. Nothing has changed from that. From what you're saying there in terms of Israel's destruction. Do you back this move by Israel 100% that we saw yesterday or last night?
Well, I think that key context is yesterday morning, the IAEA, for the first time in 2 decades, said that they had detected nuclear activities at sites that they had not known about, and that Iran had enriched uranium beyond 60% level, which is far beyond what's necessary for civilian nuclear purposes. So I can understand why the Israelis would take action, especially when Iran is so intransigent at the bargaining table. And so now, although people like me are, 100% in favor of a strong U.S.-Israel relationship, I'm hoping that we can de-escalate a little bit for a second, maybe give Iran a chance to come back to the negotiating table, and make sure that we protect our U.S. troops and interests in the region. Any kind of reprisal on them by the Iranian regime would be a grave mistake. And I think now is a time to kind of take stock of what's happened and act accordingly.
I think that's what, if you read between the lines on some of the president's Truth Social posts, he's saying that. And I guess you would, are you critical of anything that the Trump administration or the president has said? Because they said, I gave you this much time. There's still time for some type of negotiations here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's still time to come to an agreement to end the Iranian nuclear program. We know that the Israelis attacked the Natanz enrichment plant. But remember, a lot of the facilities are at Fordo, which is deep underground. And so the Iranian nuclear program in some ways remains intact. So now we have to go back to the bargaining table and explain to the Iranians that, look, we want to peacefully negotiate an end to this program. Now is the time to do it. And if you don't, you're going to invite more of what you saw last night.
And anything short of destroying the Fordo facility, or at least attempting to do it, some watchers say that this will even embolden Iran to move even faster with the facilities that it has left at this point. And I don't know, we've seen past agreements. It's very difficult to monitor compliance with all those agreements. And I mean, if they said, yeah, we're gonna be good and we're not gonna do any more enrichment at Fordo, why would we believe them at this point? There are some people that think it should. If you come this far, you've just poked the bear, and you've started things. Finish it off. You're not one of those people that thinks that we should, or that Israel should do that with Fordo.
Well, I think that I'm not sure that there's the capacity to destroy Fordo. Moreover, I think that Iran right now desperately wants those sanctions lifted. The economy is in shambles, Joe. You know that as well as anyone. And so for them to have any of those sanctions lifted or to have any sanctions relief, there has to be a verifiable way that we know that their nuclear program is dismantled. But beyond that, let's make the agreement even better. Let's end the nefarious activities in the region, especially support for Houthis and Hezbollah. And then let's also restrict the ballistic missile program, too.
I guess that just after this most recent action, does it make Iran more likely to enter into some agreement like that? Or I just, they're proud and they're going to have to respond to this. And I'm just wondering whether it would be the opposite, that this would actually force them, away from the bargaining table.
I think they have to make a decision today or in the next coming days about the cost benefit of kind of expanding, the conflict in some way. To me, I think the cost far exceed the benefits. And we are going to stand strong with our friends, partners, and allies in the region against Iranian aggression or certainly any kind of reprisal attacks. I'm also worried about lone wolves who might be inspired by them. I'm worried about these cells that they have in different countries. And so at this time, we have to make it super clear to them through our diplomatic intermediaries. We're not going to tolerate any of that. Let's get back to the bargaining table. Let's end this nuclear program. And someday, hopefully, we can welcome them back to the community of nations.
Do you get the feeling, Congressman, that if Israel made a plea to the Trump administration for those bunker buster bombs, do you get the feeling that the president would say, fine, I'm gonna give you those, or do you think he'd say, no, we need to go down the diplomatic path, and I'm not willing to directly involve, or at least not directly involve, but it would certainly raise our involvement in the situation. What do you think he would decide? Do you think Israel is asking right now?
You're asking me to read Donald Trump's mind, Joe. I failed in that effort years ago. I have no idea what he would do exactly, but I think that right now the prudent thing would be to consult with our friends, partners, and allies, and basically those people in the region who have the ability to influence the Iranian regime. And let's get back to the bargaining table right now. And let's communicate very clearly with them certain red lines. For instance, any kind of reprisal attack on Americans or American interests or troops, and we have many in the region, as you know, would be met with severe retaliation. And so let's not go down that road either.
Right. The term kicking the can down the road, though, you leave Fordo and you just, I don't know. Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate it. And I don't, you've seen what some of your, not colleagues in the House necessarily, but we are seeing some of your colleagues in the Democratic Party not nearly as supportive of Israel as some people would like. You notice that?
I think that the U.S.-Israeli relationship is cornerstone to our own national security in America, for various reasons, and we have to stand strong with Israel.
Okay. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Okay.
When we come back, oil prices reacting to the news out of the Middle East. We'll talk about the energy complex next. Squawk Box will be right back.
I can't wait to see their faces when we come out.
What seems to be the problem, soldier?
The belly, sir. It's full of Greeks.
Sneaky cowards.
Innovation changes everything.
Send it back!
With one investment, you can access the NASDAQ 100 innovators who are rethinking the world. Before investing, carefully read and consider fund investment objectives, risks, charges, expenses, and more in prospectus at Invesco.com.
Luxury meets performance. Peter Millar.
The road to opportunity is often the road overlooked. At Enterprise Mobility, we guide companies to unique solutions from our team of mobility experts. Because we believe the more ways we all have to move forward, the further we'll all go.
How do you find the perfect Father's Day gift? Simple. Just type WT.com. WeatherTech has hundreds of premium products that will keep Dad's vehicle looking its best. Like laser-measured floor liners, cargo liner, and seat protector for extra interior protection. Sunshade blocks harmful UV rays. The cup phone perfectly secures his phone while driving. Order these American-made products or a gift card at WT.com. Happy Father's Day.
Investment opportunities are everywhere you turn. Do you charge forward? Freeze in your tracks? Or let curiosity light the way? At T. Rowe Price, we ask smart questions about opportunities like advances in healthcare and how these innovations will create a healthier world tomorrow. Better questions, better outcomes.
Down, up, right, left, inside, out. Sometimes it's hard to make sense from nonsense. Go beyond the headlines. A trusted global perspective. The Economist. Know which way is up.
CNBC. Live ambitiously.
We created the club to give investors more confidence in their investing decisions.
There's a lot of learning that can happen by just listening to Jim and Jeff in the morning. Gives you a diversification in your portfolio. The return on investment for the club pays for itself.
Jim Cramer's the benefit you get that you can't get anywhere else. He has a unique ability to know the market, explain it to people. It's a great value.
Get invested. Join the club today. Go to cnbc.com/join-Jim.
Global energy markets reacting to Israeli strikes on Iran. CNBC's senior national correspondent. That doesn't, but you know a lot about oil. You go to Austria all the time, in Vienna and OPEC. You join us now. What can you tell us?
Alaska.
Right? Yeah,
Alaska. Yeah, I can tell us that I'm going to take a different tact. Okay, oil is up 8%. It's one of the biggest moves in years.
Okay,
single day moves. We're at 73.51 here, just about $80 Brent crude in Europe. Why aren't we at $100 a barrel? I think the question is not why is oil up. We know that. I think the question that people I'm pinging, why isn't oil up even more?
And it was up 14% last night and then pulled back.
It is, and it's because, A, there's plenty of oil in the world. So the world, if you just go supply-demand, you're well-supplied. Citigroup this morning saying we don't expect new longs to come into the market necessarily. That said, if Israel were to hit the oil infrastructure assets of Iran, which they did not, they attacked personnel and a nuclear site. If they hit the oil aspects, specifically something called KARG, K-H-A-R-G, or it's sometimes spelled Kark Island, then you've got probably a $20 super spike in the price of oil. Iran right now at 3.3 million barrels a day, 1.5 million of that is exported. KARK is where they export not all, but about 90% of the oil. So you blow that up. If that were to happen, the price of oil is going to have a super spike. That has not happened.
I've heard of this island before. It's been something they talked about as a potential for strikes in the past on some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been hit. Or
yeah, no. So bring that back up because actually that graphic we made that. So there is a roadmap for this. This actually occurred not quite to this level last year. I made this graphic last year when there were more tensions between Iran and Israel.
Yeah.
So kind of showing some potential targets. This was from last year. So you see sort of on the lower right, it says KARG Island. That, if you hear about that in the media, if you hear Israeli missiles hitting KARG Island, then you're going to have that super spike in the price of oil that we talked about. Outside of that, if this somehow de-escalates, there is plenty of oil, and Saudi Arabia is able to add more and has been adding more barrels to the market. If 1.5 million Iranian barrels are taken off, Saudi Arabia probably doesn't need to fill in all of that 1.5, but they could fairly quickly.
They're not friends with Iran, obviously, but they've been, I think they condemned these attacks. For Israel, would they cooperate? Would that make Iran unhappy if they increase production to make up for what we're not getting?
It's an interesting question. I can't speak for the Saudis, obviously, but I will say this. There is at least an open air of dialogue between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iran obviously is an OPEC member. You referenced OPEC. They're in OPEC.
There's definitely an open conversation between the Trump administration and Saudi Arabia.
100%.
And Saudi Arabia,
and I'm sure the headlines across who knew what will be sort of the next leg of this media story.
Right. Not only who knew what, but who allowed what, because there's airspace that had, you had to fly over somebody's airspace to get there. That country would have to know and not stop you from doing it along the way. But Saudi Arabia has moved so quickly to try and not have its own refineries targeted in some of these areas, too. They have come out and condemned the strikes.
Yes.
So has Qatar. So has the UAE. They don't want to be involved in this and don't want retaliations against them.
Iran's proxy in Yemen, the Houthis. They're effectively Iran's proxies. They once in a while lob missiles into Saudi Arabia near the oil refineries. They don't do a very good job of it. Saudi Arabia can shoot them down. That's been happening. There is at least an open air of dialogue between many of these Gulf nations. But as I alluded to earlier, the question becomes, what does Iran do? Now, the Ayatollah Khomeini last night put out some threat on social media. There are the sites that Israel hit. Now, you look at the one there, Natanz, that's a nuclear enrichment site, but it's not weapon-grade nuclear. That's called Forum. So if that were to get hit, now you've got this possibility that, is it irradiated? Is there radiation leak worry? There are other macro things. Israel's targets were personnel and uranium enrichment, but non-dangerous uranium enrichment, if that makes any sense. It was kind of a body blow. But if they go after Carg Island or the uranium enrichment facility.
In Fordo, I mean, we've been talking to people this morning who have suggested that they would if they could, or maybe they do have plans to do it, but it would take U.S. bunker busters bombs to be able to really penetrate there because it's a half mile under a mountain.
It is. And that you're talking about the weapons-grade uranium enrichment that the JCPOA, the Iran peace deal, they're trying to stop Iran from being able to enrich enough uranium to create a bomb versus having uranium to operate nuclear facilities. Yes, Joe.
You remember Signalgate? So after Signalgate, and it was about the Houthi, striking the Houthis, and then people sort of rolled their eyes when President Trump said that we settled things with the Houthis and they weren't going to do anything anymore. We haven't heard much recently from the Houthis.
The Fifth Fleet is sitting off the coast of Bahrain, the Strait of Hormuz.
Have they been behaving themselves, the Houthis?
Yeah,
to some extent, right?
Like I said, once in a while they launch a missile into Saudi Arabia.
What about
We're still
now?
here.
Yeah.
To your point, here's the next leg, and here's what I want the audience to take away. If there is an escalation, a further escalation, Iran does something back to Israel, which has closed its airspace. I have a friend whose wife and daughter are in Tel Aviv right now for high school graduation. They're scared, understandably. They want to get out. If there is an escalation, is there mines? We've heard that this is nothing new about this, okay? Is there mines being laid in the Strait of Hormuz in which 20% of the world's oil passes? And does the Fifth Fleet of the United States, which is sitting kind of off the coast of Iran, it is the biggest non-World War II naval fleet in the world. Do they have to react to anything Iran may do? The question, Joe, is this. How much do you react to this? Do you mine a few ships? Or does this become a full-out escalation? The oil market is going to watch that. And let's all pray that
and it might depend on Fordo and our involvement with whatever happens with Fordo.
Also,
maybe
by the
nothing
way,
happens.
Europe meeting quickly, June 15th, G7 in Canada. Europe wants to lower the price cap on Russian oil to $45. That probably takes this off the table, because how do you lower the price cap to 45 when oil's at 75? You can do it when oil's at 60. So now Europe has got to go back to the table and think, what do we do about Russia?
How much of the SPR we got? I asked someone earlier, they won't do it. So we got, is it
190 million barrels.
How much?
Half full.
It's half full.
Effectively.
Well, only half.
Well, it takes 3.5 years to fill it back up. You can. It's like a sink. You can drain a sink very quickly.
Yep.
You can't fill the sink very quickly. It has technical limitations on how much oil and how fast.
But we're only at half.
About half, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have no data in front of me, so it's going off the old noggin here, Joe.
That's not great. Okay. Thank you,
Brian.
Brian.
Power lunch in like 7 hours.
Okay. What do you mean? Okay. You're using the royal U. Okay. See you later. Thank you.
Thanks,
EWE.
Yeah.
Another big market story we're watching this morning is Boeing after yesterday's Air India plane crash. The former FAA acting administrator, Billy Nolan, will join us after the break. Take a look at shares of Boeing this morning. That stock off sharply yesterday. You can see this morning, Boeing shares are down another 1%, just over $200. We'll be right back.
Comcast Business doesn't just power businesses. We help turn them into logistics mastering, supply chain transforming, seamlessly restocking, frictionless paying, poke bowl ordering, cyber securing, mobile access granting, data managing. Welcome to the worlding modern businesses. Powering the engine of modern business, Comcast Business.
Congratulations, Mom and Dad. Your life now revolves around sports.
Everett, Neela!
but you wouldn't trade it for anything. Welcome to Sporthood. DSG, only at Dick's.
Opportunities can be hard to find, like catching lightning in a bottle. In uncertain times, it's tempting to retreat or simply wait and see. At CME Group, we empower those who act. We deliver tools to help manage risk and capture opportunities in every market climate, across every major asset class, to seize each possibility at precisely the right moment. CME Group, opportunity is everywhere.
At IHG Hotels and Resorts, you can stick to the agenda or experience something unexpected, all while earning points for free nights with IHG One Rewards. With IHG's 19 hotel brands, you can guest how you guessed.
Overtime's about understanding what just happened in the markets that day and preparing for tomorrow. I'm looking to talk to sophisticated investors, beginning investors. I'm always learning.
Closing Bell Overtime, weekdays 4 Eastern and streaming on CNBC+.
Wait, I thought Venmo was for paying people.
Yeah, and for everything else.
Everything?
Everything.
Here they come, yo. Here they come.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, this is where it's at. Hey!
Now you can Venmo everything.
Hungry?
Get the Venmo debit card and get up to 15% cash back.
At Ace, however you grill, we've got the perfect one for you. Because only your local Ace has all the best brands in one place, like Weber, Big Green Egg, Traeger, and Blackstone. That sounds pretty perfect.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
Would I rather buy 80 expensive, annoying, tiny cartridges, or use these replacement ink bottles and save up to $1,000? Don't get cartridged. Switch to the cartridge-free Epson EcoTank. Just fill it, Jay!
Over 200 bodies recovered after an Air India flight. A Boeing 787 that was bound for London crashed right after takeoff, striking a medical school. Joining us right now is Billy Nolan. He's a former FAA acting administrator, also chief regulatory officer at Archer Aviation. Billy, thank you for being with us today. Obviously, we're just over 24 hours out from this accident. It's hard to have a real idea of what happened, but that certainly hasn't stopped speculation in other places. As somebody who understands how aviation works, who understands how these things will be investigated, what can you tell us, understanding that there's still a lot more information that will come?
Well, thanks. First, Becky, thanks for having me on. I'll just say that my thoughts are with the families, with the first responders, with the Air India team. To your point, at this point, we have more questions than we have answers for. But I think it's helpful to kind of step back and think about what should have happened, and that's sort of what sort of guides the investigation itself. So you've got a qualified and current crew who's flying this flight. You've got an airplane, Boeing 787-800, that's been operated for about 11 years. You've got a hot, heavy day, if you will. This was slated to take off on roughly a 9-hour flight from Ahmedabad to London's Gatwick Airport. So as we think about all of those things, now that, of course, we hear that the black box, that the flight data recorder has been recovered, the investigators will, they're in a data and the fact collection phase at the moment, and they will certainly try to get to some answers as quickly as possible.
The video, there are several videos that exist of the plane. It's been heavily analyzed on social media and other places too. I'm sure you've gotten a look at it. What's your takeaway from what you see in that video?
Well, again, I think, without getting into too much any speculation at this point, what I can say, you will look to performance, right? You would expect airplane is prepared for takeoff. It lifts off. Typically, what happens is that once you've got a positive rate of climb, the pilot flying will call for positive rate, flaps up. You would then climb out, and at some point, you start to clean up the airplane. That means that you retract the flaps and the slats, right? We see in this video that the landing gear is still in the extended down position, right? So those will be things certainly that the investigators will focus on. They will look very closely at performance. They'll look very closely at configuration and to see, was there anything that's amiss? So those are things they could get. And certainly those are things that the flight data recorder can give you positions of the flight controls, the position of landing gear. We can obviously see in this video that it's down. So you gather all this information, and then certainly they will be able to put a complete picture together and get to a probable cause, I think, fairly quickly.
I mean, this is a Boeing jet with GE aerospace engines that are on it. Air India has a very good reputation for maintenance and being able to make sure that they have upkeep and taking care of those planes. An 11-year-old plane, certainly not something that's outside the realm of where you would expect it to still be operating well. What kind of assurances can you give the general public who, see this after a difficult 6 months and even difficult few years in the airline industry in terms of feeling safe about flying?
Excellent points all around. Becky, what I would say is this, right? I believe context is always important. On any given day, globally, we're flying just short of 102,000 flights each and every day. Boeing to date has delivered nearly 1,200 Boeing 787s. They recently announced that they've flown their billionth passenger. All of that suggests that you've got a very this is one of the most technologically advanced modern jetliners. So, from a perspective of the big picture, we've got a very safe system. Now, I'm just back from Mexico City, where I was attending the Association of Latin American Airlines, where the airlines come together and they were discussing flight safety. They were discussing operational excellence. They were discussing training. So these are things that aviation professionals and regulators around the world are very much focused on. To your point, we look back at every one of these unfortunate events, say, what's that lesson learned? How do we continue to ensure the flying public that it is safe to fly, that our systems, both here in the U.S. and abroad, are robust and resilient? And certainly we'll take every lesson from this tragic event and say, how do we prevent that from happening again in the future?
Billy Nolan is the former acting FAA administrator. And Billy, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, Goldman Sachs Vice Chair, former Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan on the markets, Middle East tensions, and how it will affect the markets and the Fed. We'll be right back.
I am here.
I am here.
I am here. I am here.
I am here.
There's a place that's been making one advanced cancer discovery after another for over 75 years.
I am here.
I am here.
At Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, what we learn from caring for our patients drives the momentum of discovery in our labs, which makes our patient treatment even better.
I'm here because of Dana-Farber.
What we do here changes lives everywhere.
Where are all the animals, Dad?
Don't know, kiddo. Just not our day.
It's a rare thing when someone you've been with for so long finds a way to surprise you. It's like discovering E-Trade's easy-to-use platform now comes with expert insights from Morgan Stanley to help you navigate the markets.
Mom can speak walrus?
When logic bends, when certainties shatter, when left is right and right is left, which way do you turn? Go beyond the headlines. A trusted global perspective. The Economist. Know which way is up.
Nothing stands still. Not technology, not the market, and not Franklin Templeton. We've been a firm in motion for over 75 years. Always innovating. Today, we're a leader in public and private markets, digital assets, and custom tax management, empowering advisors with solutions to build the portfolios of the future today. Franklin Templeton, your trusted partner for what's ahead.
Itch, itch, scratch, must not itch. Scratch.
Stop the itch sanity with Cortisone 10 for bug bites, poison ivy, and other itches. It works fast and lasts for hours. Cortisone 10. And for no mess relief, try new cooling spray.
When cyber threats target the world's data, seconds matter. That's why the world's most trusted brands depend on ReliaQuest gray matter to contain threats in seconds. It's the only technology-independent, AI-driven platform built by security operators for security operators. ReliaQuest. Make security possible.
If the current crop keeps going higher and higher still, and we keep having so much froth in the rest of the market, then we are indeed headed to the danger zone. Not yet, but soon.
Mad Money, weeknight 6 Eastern and streaming on CNBC+. The CNBC Disruptor 50 list revealed. Meet the innovative companies shattering boundaries, shaking up industries, and changing the game for good. See the complete list at cnbc.com/disruptor50.
Israeli military says that it has completed a series of strikes against Iran's surface-to-surface missile systems. NBC's Keir Simmons is in Dubai, and he joins us now with more. Keir, hi.
Hey, Becky, this is a major strike and actually a continuing campaign. You can see from that spike in the price of oil, which continues this morning, that there are more strikes likely. There was a fresh wave of Israeli strikes underway this morning. Iran responding with more than 100 drones, many shot down, Israel says. And then those comments from President Trump, who had questioned whether an Israeli strike would help negotiations over the Iran nuclear program, now saying on social media that the next attacks are already planned and may be more brutal. The Israelis targeting the Iranian nuclear program, but also Iranian military leaders and Iranian bases. Iran's president with a message to his nation this morning saying Iran's legitimate and powerful response will make Israel regret its foolish act. The question before all this, Becky, was Israel capable of taking out, if you like, Israel's nuclear program, fully taking it out without U.S. munitions? I guess we're going to get the answer to that question in the coming days.
Yeah, I think so. Keir, we've been talking this through all morning. What's the next step that people are waiting for, watching?
Yeah, the next step, I think, is more of this, more of the same. The question of just how capable is Iran of responding, how much pain can it inflict on Israel. Reports from Jordan that Iranian drones have been shot down there. How does Iran respond to that kind of action by Arab countries in this region? There are many, many question marks. There's going to be plenty of uncertainty going into the weekend and through next week. We could see this conflagration through next week, Becky.
Keir, thank you. That's NBC's Keir Simmons.
You bet.
Joining us now, Goldman Sachs Vice Chairman Rob Kaplan, who is former Dallas Fed president. And you know what we were going to talk about. Obviously, we're CPI, PPI, things like that, Rob. But at this point, we have obviously been sort of upended by what happened in the last 24 hours or so. Does it change anything for as far as the Fed's calculus goes?
I think the market reaction, there's a market reaction, obviously, in oil. You see gold spiking. I'd say the equity market reactions are somewhat muted. The 10-year, interestingly, the Treasury market reaction is somewhat muted. Normally, you'd see greater flight to quality. So I think the markets are sort of in a wait-and-see mode, muted initial reaction, and I think the Fed will just watch this carefully day to day to see if it's going to be contained or there are going to be a further escalation. But they'll watch it like the rest of us. They'll watch it day to day.
What did you make at this point, back to what we were going to talk about, what did you make of the latest inflation numbers? They're positive, obviously, but is it the calm before the storm in your view?
Well, it tells you a couple things. One, it tells you if it weren't for the tariff situation, we're in a disinflating situation. We're in a disinflating world, and I think if it weren't for these prospective tariffs that will flow through and are flowing through, I think the Fed would be on their front foot to be looking to cut rates now. That's the first thing it tells me. And then the second thing is that they're going to watch how these tariffs, where they're set in the next several weeks, how they flow through the economy. But I think if I were at the Fed, it would encourage me that after we get over the horizon, maybe the tariff impact could be more muted than I fear, and that over the horizon, I think the world by and large has got an oversupply of goods that's driven heavily by China, and maybe we can get back to taking action sometime during the fall. But I would want to keep my options open, but that's what I would take from these numbers.
So at this point, Bob, if the tariffs, we've got delays, we've got respites, we've got things like that, if those are extended or if it wouldn't accelerate from here, are you convinced that that tariffs become something that should stay on the Fed's radar, or would you be more concerned with some of the uncertainty surrounding it and what it does to growth concerns?
Well, we've already seen a lot of the negative growth impact, I think, in terms of just the pause in corporate behavior, corporate investing, and consumer behavior. So we're already seeing that. I think if I were at the Fed, I'd be thinking and reminding myself that ideally these will be a one-time cost shock. I'll also be reminded that in a world of overcapacity for goods, even with this, companies will have negotiating leverage over suppliers to push prices down. They may have to take some out of margin. They may have to put some in prices. So if I were at the Fed, I would say the height of uncertainty about the impact is in the next several months. And over the horizon, as I said, I think a lot of the other trends lead me to believe that we can maybe resume our march toward our 2% goal later this year into next year. And so the height of the uncertainty is we're probably in the middle of it right now.
You saw some of the Fed futures yesterday, kind of surprising, maybe not surprising, but can those change a month from now? If we got hotter numbers, do we go back down? Do you think what's your outlook?
Well, directionally, what I'd make is the Fed futures is the first meeting where there's a real meaningful probability of a cut is September. So what I take from it, which I think is about right, that no action in June, unlikely in July. The Fed, though, it will likely prepare itself and prepare in its comments that it might take action into the fall. But we still don't know what the tariff rates are. And we still have a budget bill and a tax bill that has not yet been passed. And we'll see over the summer what the details of that are. And so it just tells you that the summer is going to be spent processing this. Obviously, there'll be tension in certain parties wanting the Fed to take action sooner. And I think the Fed will be on its front foot, but it's got to understand what the facts are on tariffs and how they flow through. And I think it still needs a little bit more information in order to see that situation clarify.
Rob, if you were on the Fed, would you really be looking at the details of the big, beautiful bill? Would that have any influence on whether you cut rates or left rates the same?
The main things I'd be looking at are well, two things. Number one, we're going on the margin from more government-directed spending, American Rescue Act, Inflation Reduction Act, Infrastructure CHIPS Act, very directed, to less of that. And to the extent we're going to run deficits, it's more tax-related, more money in people's pockets, which I think will be less inflationary. So that's one thing I will take from it than maybe the previous approach. And then the second comment would be, I started the year thinking that deficits would likely be going down and the budget fiscal might be contractionary. And we're now getting to the point it may be neutral or expansionary. So it reduces my thought that we're going to have a recession. I think probabilities of recession are going down. We're in a relatively tight job market. Companies are not. They're not hiring as much, but they're also not firing because the job market's so tight. So all of that makes me believe that we're going to have growth, some growth stability, sluggish but stable. And my main focus ought to be on seeing how these tariffs will flow through, and then getting myself ready to potentially take action.
We got to go. Can you imagine we really are somewhere in between Goldilocks, great economy, inflation's coming down, things are awesome, and stagflation. And we're somewhere in between there, and the Fed really doesn't know which is more likely. I guess it depends on how the facts change and circumstances and policy. And everything else.
And I'd be cautiously optimistic that this may well work through. The issue is we just need to take some more time, and there's several structural changes, and I think the Fed will need to do that. But I think the odds of the stag part is stabilizing a bit. The key to the budget, by the way, the budget bill, is you need growth at least 1.8% real or greater for deficits to be lower than the CBO's. And if they're lower than growth, they'll be higher, and I'd be focused on that also.
All right, Rob Kaplan, thanks. I appreciate it.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Nuveen invests with the foresight and vision to anticipate the needs of future generations, to build strong portfolios that deliver lasting legacies, to innovate and adapt for what's just around the corner. Because after 125 years of yesterdays, Nuveen knows your ultimate stakeholder is tomorrow. Nuveen, invest like the future is watching.
Wow, looks like your hiring's making a lot of people happy.
ZipRecruiter's new tool, Zip Intro, is a game changer. It saved me so many steps in the hiring process. Look, I just pick a time, and it handles everything, from finding great candidates to setting up interviews.
So, no more back and forth?
Right. I can just choose from this list and meet with them as soon as tomorrow. Oh, wow. Another dignified portrait of me.
Zip Intro. Post jobs today. Talk to qualified candidates tomorrow. Try it free. Only at ZipRecruiter.com/CNBC.
At Morgan Stanley, old school hard work meets bold new thinking. Partnering to unlock new ideas, to create new legacies, to transform a company, industry, economy, generation. Because grit and vision, working in lockstep, puts you on the path to your full potential. Old school grit, new world ideas. Morgan Stanley.
Michael Jordan's the only guy who can compare in terms of confidence.
When you're Steph Curry, there's brand value there, there's brand awareness.
Curry Inc., the business of Stephen Curry. Stream now on CNBC+.
The Infiniti QX60. Comfort redefined. Luxury rediscovered.
This is a meal. We're talking a good food that makes you feel good meal. You feeling that? Now, meal this. A salad for the first time in a week meal. A catching up with your ex meal.
So, how's your mom?
Been there. Ooh, a scoring cool dad points meal.
Obviously.
Thank you. Do I spy an I need 5 minutes to myself meal? Whatever you're feeling, at Panera, it just meals good.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. I'm Dominic Hsu with your check on the morning movers. Some of the laggers today, travel and leisure stocks like Carnival, Royal Caribbean, United Airlines on higher fuel costs and perhaps lower consumer demand given the geopolitical tensions. And then watch defense stocks like L3 Harris, RTX, Northrop Grumman on those heightened geopolitical tensions. Becky, back over to you guys.
Okay, Dom, thank you very much. All right, folks, that does it for us this week. It's been a busy week. All of this coverage will be picked up with Squawk on the Street starting in just a moment. Have a good weekend. We'll see you back here next week.
Good Friday morning. Welcome to Squawk on the Street. I'm Carl Quintanilla with David Faber, Sarah Eisen, who posted 9 to the New York Stock Exchange. Kramer has the morning off. Global markets are reacting to Israel's strike on Iranian personnel and nuclear sites. Defense stocks are up. The VIX above 20. Oil highest level in about 5 months. And the bid for treasuries not as large as some expected. Yields are higher across the curve. Our roadmap this morning is going to begin with Israel striking those nuclear sites. The president urging Iran to make a deal, quote, before it's too late.
Markets are reacting to those rising Mideast tensions. Oil is spiking, as we said. Gold's near a 2-month high. And defense stocks, as you might expect, are rallying.
Plus, one of the black boxes in the Air India Boeing Dreamliner crash has been recovered as investigators search the site for any evidence on what could have caused the disaster.
We begin with the global markets under pressure and energy prices spiking, all in reaction to Israel's preemptive strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. At one point, we did have crude soaring more than 13% in the wake of those attacks, currently up almost 9% on a weekly basis for Brent in particular, Sarah. This is going to be in the top 20 gains on a week for Brent since the mid-1980s.
And yet, it could have been worse. And some of the themes from the notes this morning from the analysts that cover oil say, actually, we don't expect a prolonged impact here when it comes to oil. Goldman Sachs, while we have a higher geopolitical risk premium, we still assume no disruptions to our oil supply in the Middle East. And our forecast remains that strong supply growth outside of U.S. shale will reduce Brent prices to $59 in 2025 by Q4. Bottom line, there is still so much we do not know. We do not know what comes next. There is a sense that this will be more prolonged. We've heard that from both Prime Minister Netanyahu, also from President Trump, and any of the spokespeople out of the IDF, that this is sort of the beginning. But President Trump is leaving the window open. So don't know if those 6th round of talks are going to be happening on Sunday as planned, and just don't know what the escalation and retaliation looks like from here. Obviously, the big concern for oil traders is the Strait of Hormuz, which, you know, that is the key passageway. Iran has harassed and disrupted global shipping in the past. So that's going to be a big question mark hanging over this market where so much flows through around the world.
A quarter of all supply moves through there, although we do have headlines this morning from the maritime officials that traffic in the straits is operating normally as for now. Sarah mentioned some of the relatively dovish notes on oil. Piper's the exception this morning, David. We would not fade any oil price rally. This is war. This is not a demonstration of capability like we saw in 24 and in 19. They add there is some 3 million barrels a day of productive capacity not used, all of which is within reach of Iran's conventional forces. So we'll see. There's a split on where crude goes from here.
I know. What do we expect the Saudis are going to do as well? We haven't said anything at this point, but there's always a possibility that they'll indicate a willingness to increase production.
They have the most spare capacity of anybody, right? They are the cartel kingdom and can help offset it, but we're still talking. I mean, first of all, there's no indication Israel did not strike any of the energy assets in Iran that I guess could be on the table and could always, you know, be in play here, but no indication yet. I think the option of more Iranian barrels coming on the market as a result of diplomacy and peace talks looks like
unlikely,
a farther away.
And that was the key, because Saudis have already done a lot. Our producers appear unwilling at this point to step on the gas regarding production here.
Yeah, beyond what they've been doing, which is all-time highs.
Right. But maybe might be down for the year. We don't know.
Maybe down a little bit.
But
that's
the notion
more
is that
about where the price of oil has been.
Right. The notion is that Iranian oil might have been the easiest way to add to global production.
Right. That doesn't look likely at this point. For more on Israel's attack on Iran's nuclear sites, let's go to Megan Casella at the White House. And we are getting updates from the president. Megan.
Absolutely, Sarah. Sweeping up a lot of reaction from here so far, though a lot of questions still outstanding as well. The Trump administration initially emphasizing overnight that it was not involved in these attacks, saying Israel had taken unilateral action here. But then President Trump this morning standing strongly by Israel in a few posts, saying in the last few hours that he gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal, but no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. He went on to say that there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. And then in a second post about an hour later, the president said he had given Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal, and that today is day 61. He said, I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance. So a couple of things, guys, to highlight from these posts. The first is the president appearing here to show more explicit support for the attacks than his Secretary of State did. Rubio emphasizing Israel acting alone, and the president highlighting how this came only after the U.S.'s preferred options hadn't worked. And then secondly, he talks about this idea of a second chance. The president is continuing to shepherd Iran toward a negotiated nuclear deal, even after these attacks now. As you mentioned a few minutes ago, the next round of those talks had been set for Sunday. So I've asked about those, the status of them. We will have to see if they still take place and, of course, what they look like. And then finally, just in the meantime, both Israel and the U.S. today bracing for retaliation. As soon as today, I should say, Israel has declared a state of emergency, and we know the U.S. State Department has established a Middle East task force, according to an agency spokesperson, who says the U.S. is continuously planning for a wide range of situations for regions with heightened tensions. Guys.
I'm sorry, Megan, I know, last time there was back and forth in terms of between Iran and Israel. We were obviously helpful in terms of getting drones and various things out of the sky for the Israelis. Has there been any word as to whether the U.S. is going to aid in a similar function this time? And I know that we've withdrawn some personnel as well from the overall region.
Absolutely. Those evacuations, voluntary departures of some not necessary personnel and their families started earlier in the week, suggesting there was some indication that something was coming. And you're referring, of course, to October, when the U.S. and other allies helped fend off Iranian attacks against Israel. It does absolutely seem like the U.S. and Washington is standing strongly by Israel here and will be there for whatever they need to defend against continued Iranian attacks. That's sort of the distinction that we've started to see so far, is that while Rubio has said, Israel was acting alone, was acting unilaterally, that the U.S. was not explicitly endorsing this first round of attacks, both Republicans on Capitol Hill as well as here in the White House are saying that they support Israel full throttle and will do whatever they need. So that is the expectation, that whatever Iran does next to try to retaliate, the U.S. will be there with their
Well, they did. I mean, 100 drones were launched by Iran against Israel and were reportedly intercepted by Israel and allies, including the United States. I think the big question, though, Megan, is what role does the U.S. play from here if indeed it is support and friendship by their ally in terms of dismantling the nuclear facilities, which is ultimately the goal here? I mean, they're not just picking war, they're defending themselves. And there is a thought that Israel would ultimately need the U.S.'s help, maybe not, to completely eradicate these nuclear facilities.
That has long been the view, that for the nuclear facilities that are deeply underground, they would need those U.S. weapons in order to get that done. We don't know yet at this point exactly what the U.S.'s response is going to look like, even as they vow to support Israel. The president in his post clearly trying to say the negotiated or more peaceful path is still his preferred method. So we don't know if Israel would be willing to go further without the U.S. standing by them. We don't know where Republicans on the Hill are falling on this, whether they'll be more hawkish at this point or again try to get back to those negotiated talks. The president has been clear for months now that he wanted the negotiated deal, the more peaceful one. But what we don't know is, especially given whether those talks happen on Sunday and how they go, if that changes. At what point does the president and does Washington decide to go a little bit further and say these negotiations clearly aren't getting anywhere?
Right, yeah, it was interesting. He was asked about those evacuations about a day ago at the Kennedy Center and told reporters, well, you're going to have to figure that one out for yourself. Megan Casella, thank you. As we said, defense stocks rallying on these rising geopolitical concerns. Joining us this morning, former White House Middle East Policy Advisor, Ambassador Mark Ginsburg. Ambassador, thanks for the time today. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So we've made it clear we didn't participate in this. Lebanon's told Hezbollah they are not clearing any action. Can this be contained, so to speak?
I think it all depends on the retaliation that Iran still has in its back pocket. didn't use its ballistic missiles, number one. And number two, the Israelis have indicated, Carl, that they're going to continue to attack because, you see, they don't have the deep munition busting bombs that the United States would have ordinarily provided them, but Israel doesn't have fighter bombers. And so they're using their fighter fleet to attack these sites time and again. And the question is, how long is it going to take for Israel to be able to, quote, declare victory? And it's hard to tell, because if they keep bombing Iran and are unable to reach and penetrate deep down, that's going to be a problem. And then the question is, what is the United States going to do to help Israel facilitate an end to Iran's nuclear program?
Right.
There are some, though, this morning that argue the losses that Iran sustained on personnel alone would make it difficult for them to restaff quickly. Where does that leave them?
Yes, I agree. Look, the decapitation attacks that Israel conducted against the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, its head chief of staff of the military, key scientists, the fact that Israel knows where these people live, where they're working, how they're able to maneuver around any impediments that the Iranians have constructed is another example of the enormous intelligence capability Israelis have inside Iran.
What about the political ramifications of this inside the U.S.? I mean, what do you think President Trump is dealing with from his own party, from the Democrats? I mean, to me, it's always surprising that this is a partisan issue, but what's your take?
I don't think, Sarah, you're going to hear a lot of opposition coming out of the Democratic Party, except on the far left. There's been a unified front, no matter where you have stood politically, to support Israel's efforts to defend itself against Iran and to ensure that Iran no longer has the capacity to develop a nuclear weapon. Look, the Trump administration offered Iran a off-ramp here to help create a new consortium that would enable Iran to enrich uranium under the protective eye of Arab states outside of Iran. Sarah, that's where the talks collapsed. Iran refused to agree to permit itself to transfer its Iran enrichment programs outside of Iran. And across the political spectrum, there's support for the fact that Iran blew these talks apart.
Mark, do you think there's any opportunity or chance, as I think some would hope for, that there would be regime change in Iran?
There's so much opposition to this regime inside Iran, while you'll see a galvanization of nationalism because Iranians don't like to be attacked. This regime has already been teetering on collapse. The economy inside Iran is awful. It remains isolated. There's been uprisings inside Iran. The question is whether or not the administration and Israel are able to, in effect, provide what essentially, Carl, would be not only just political support, but encourage Iran opposition groups to take advantage of this opportunity and try to overthrow the regime. And yet, there's no doubt that the internal police force of the regime remains quite intact. And that's the main reason why you probably won't see an uprising just now.
You can probably appreciate, Mr. Ambassador, sort of the market's concern about not just this element of geopolitics, but the Ukraine conflict continues. There's famine in Gaza. We haven't even gotten to the trade wars that have the street concerned about the economy and trade. At what point do you worry about our bandwidth on either military or intelligence, given all of these boiling pots?
There's no doubt that if I were Secretary of State, I'd be wondering when I look around the world, where do I look first? It's long been understood that the Israelis were banging on the door of the White House, demanding that the president give them the permission to strike Iran. Netanyahu just survived a no confidence vote in the Knesset, and he felt, I think, at this point emboldened, in number one. And number two, the Iranians, the only real weapon that the Iranians have to, in effect, put more pressure on Israel is to, in effect, try to stop petroleum exports through the Straits of Hormuz. And they have the capacity to do that. Insofar as U.S. bandwidth in Ukraine and around the world, look, if I were Secretary of State, I wouldn't be sleeping much these days.
Ambassador, appreciate it. A tough way to finish up this week. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Ambassador Mark Ginsburg. When we come back, get a closer look at oil's rally today after those airstrikes on Iran. Take a look at the pre-market. We'll get to some of the other news. There is some corporate headlines as well regarding RH and Adobe. Stay with us.
Comcast Business doesn't just power businesses. We help turn them into logistics mastering, supply chain transforming, seamlessly restocking, frictionless paying, poke bowl ordering, cyber securing, mobile access granting, data managing. Welcome to the worlding modern businesses. Powering the engine of modern business, Comcast Business.
In the off-season, I'm a male hand mop. Now I have relaxed fit hands-free Skechers slip-ins. No bending down and no touching. I kind of love not using my hands.
Come on, Andy.
I'm out the game. Try relaxed fit Skechers slip-ins.
We are going to write the future of healthcare, one where care is more personalized, more accessible, and much lower cost. This IPO is an important moment, but it is still just the beginning of our story.
The grind catches up with everyone, even me. That's why I trust Cunol Ultra High Absorption Turmeric to support my joint health. It's the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric. It helps you keep doing the things you love at every age. Cunol, the brand I trust.
You can fit a lot of vacation into a weekend. Book your next weekend getaway with Vrbo.
Good morning. Welcome to CNBC Plus. Where to?
Countdown to the opening bell. Don't go anywhere.
New York for the Open.
On our way.
CNBC Plus, on-the-go access to global market data, news, and analysis as it happens. Access any market, anytime, anywhere with CNBC Plus. Start streaming at cnbc.com/plus.
All right, here comes Slugger.
Well, I'll be darned.
Great catch, son.
Not America's #1 baseball, Fat Boy. America's #1 ice cream sandwich.
Peter Piper's pepper picking proved painful. So he ordered all he needed in one place on Amazon Business.
Peter Piper picked peppers for Run Rock Rhyme.
And positively prospered. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying.
It's a hit?
Someone say hit?
No, we're a hit.
Oh, you need like a good neighbor. State Farm is there.
At State Farm, we know how to help your growing business.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Oil prices, of course, are surging this following Israel's military strikes against Iran. Joining us now is John Kilduff of Again Capital. He's also a CNBC contributor. All right, John, what's your take here in terms of what this is going to mean for the oil market?
Well, I think we're unbelievably almost, David, taking this in stride yet again. You know, when it comes to Iran, there's a lot of fear around that country's perceived power and ability to retaliate. And now this is going to be the third iteration in several years where significant attacks were made in Iran. The market holds its breath. And in a way, thankfully, little to nothing happens. I think because, and it's our view that Iran has been so degraded militarily at this point by the Israelis that there's not a whole lot they can do. So the risk premium, while it has to be there, it does come rushing into this market. Cooler heads and really the reality of the situation tends to prevail, and these markets calm down accordingly.
Yeah, you know, we can all question Iran's military response or their ability to respond, but what about asymmetric response, which you can't discount, and what that could mean?
That's where Iran's real power would seem to lie at this point. Obviously, straight up one-on-one military confrontation, not there. But attacking oil infrastructure, for example, anywhere in the region, you know, or backing their proxies like the Houthis to put attacks like they did a number of years ago against Saudi Arabia's, you know, Abqaiq facility, for example. I will say, though, that the Iranians are finding themselves having to walk a fine line here. because they do have obviously some support from their Arab neighbors, but it's limited. And the Saudis in particular don't want a region-wide conflagration. They had asked President Trump to not have this attack even occur. Here we are, but they don't want that.
What about China and Russia, notable buyers of Iranian oil? Where do they sit in all of this? And the fact that they would be losers if there was some sort of disruption from Iranian oil shipments or through the Strait of Hormuz. How does that play out?
That's the big pushback on Iran, Sarah, is China in particular. They don't want their economy. Our economy gets hurt. We've seen the inflation effects during the Ukraine war from higher oil prices. But the Chinese economy, being industrial-based as it is, gets crushed. So they don't want any disruption of oil supplies out of the Middle East, particularly the Strait of Hormuz. So they are a new element in this Middle East gaming out situation in that they keep everyone sort of at bay and reconsidering escalating this to the next level.
All right, John, so realizing it's obviously a dynamic situation, give me a call, though, on oil, over the next few months. I mean, do we calm down from here, or do we sort of stay at this level? What do you think?
I think you've seen the worst of it for now, David. I think to the extent that, this dissipates, this risk grouping will quickly come out of oil prices. The price range we've seen, right around that $60 a barrel mark for WTI, $5 above, $5 below, that's sort of where we've settled out. And we'll have to see how summer driving demand goes here in the United States. It's looking a bit soft right now, and other factors. But I think the downward pressure on oil prices should resume. And I wouldn't expect this situation to cause the wheels to come off that bus.
All right. John, thank you. John Kilduff.
Meantime, take one last look at the pre-market here as we get a Friday session underway. Dow futures looked open. Dow looks to open down about 511 points. Don't go anywhere.
At Capital Group, we take care when crafting our active ETFs. Our portfolio managers and analysts collaborate to strike the right balance between strength, flexibility, and endurance. We believe this hands-on approach sets our active ETFs apart so they can make a difference at the core of a portfolio. Because we don't fit molds, we prefer to cast originals. Capital Group, actively different, active ETFs.
Oh, so you corporate types think you're rock stars?
That's as ridiculous as us being corporate types. Let's begin.
Rockstar move using Workday to handle all our AI agents.
Well, watch me handle my agent, Gary. Bubbly water, no bubbles.
So what'd you do this weekend?
The huge.
Shout out to Carmen for using Workday to manage our people and AI agents.
What are we doing?
Just clap.
Carmen!
The road to opportunity is often the road overlooked. At Enterprise Mobility, we guide companies to unique solutions from our team of mobility experts. Because we believe the more ways we all have to move forward, the further we'll all go.
In the age of AI, smarter threats need even smarter protection. CrowdStrike Charlotte AI is delivering the future of cybersecurity for what's now and what's next. Built on the intelligence of every breach we stop and refined by human expertise, Charlotte AI gets smarter so your business stays safer. So you can build for tomorrow with confidence and efficiency and protect what matters most. That's why the businesses you trust CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike. We stop breaches.
So, what do you think about the Jeep Wrangler?
Very spacious, lots of open air.
What are you going to use it for?
Thwarting international terrorism, saving the world, that kind of stuff.
Sorry, we just saw Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and we are very excited.
Test drive?
No mission is impossible with a Jeep Wrangler.
Purchase and get an average of $7,000 below MSRP on select 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokee gas models in stock. Hurry, this offer will self-destruct June 30th.
The U.S. Open. We're about to witness the world's best golfers live. And with this field, the amount of talent out there, these guys are on a major collision course. So let's go! The U.S. Open on NBC and Peacock.
Stocks under some broad pressure this morning. Some of the laggards on the NASDAQ 100 pre-market. We'll get to Adobe and the guidance from last night. They actually do raise the full-year guide just a touch. But Lam Research, Shopify, Marvell going to round you out on the top 5. Opening bell coming up in about 5.5 minutes. Don't forget, you can catch us anytime and anywhere. Just listen to and follow the Squawk on the Street Opening Bell podcast.
Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World.
CNBC's daily digital show has trading updates, the latest headlines, a global perspective, and high-profile interviews. Scan to watch CNBC's Crypto World, sponsored by Crypto.com.
Hulu has live music. Get ready to Bonnaroo right from your living room as the biggest artists take the stage. Bonnaroo Music Festival. Streaming live to all Hulu subscribers.
Presented by New Body Bottolata Lotion from Rio de Janeiro.
Hulu has live music. Get ready to Bonnaroo right from your living room as the biggest artists take the stage. Bonnaroo Music Festival. Streaming live to all Hulu subscribers. Presented by Ray-Ban Meta. Iconic style meets Meta AI.
Everyone is raving about Ballerina. It's the #1 action movie in America. Cool. Wickedly entertaining. A jaw-dropping spectacle. Shall we? Ballerina. Rated R.
This is Mia. She dreams of taking her boutique swimwear brand nationwide. With her business growing so fast, she needs fast funding to keep making waves. That's why Mia has U.S. Bank Business Essentials, a combination of checking and card payment processing, giving her access to funds typically in 24 hours. Because we love watching her make a splash. That's the power of Mia. And this is the power of us.
A new look entirely, because Lovesac adapts to life, our life.
Once you have kids, you want to make sure that they're taken care of. I kept putting it off, but finally I searched best online.
There we go. Hello? There we go. It's working now.
I was able to get a rate instantly. It's a relief, to be honest.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
You think so?
Nuveen Invest.
Let me see. 3 minutes looks like it's dropping already, but 15 minutes, yeah. I think we might pump a little bit and dump.
Just around the corner. Because after 125 years of yesterdays,
It's trying.
Nuveen knows your ultimate stakeholder.
Should I?
Nuveen, invest like the future is watching.
The opening bell.
What's too long? Should I sell my spy puts or wait for the weekends in case they strike again? Because my spy puts is for September.
Senior markets commentator Mike Santoli.
Strike is 5:30.
The dollar's reaction and
September, yeah, it's fine. September 19th.
Rush to safety in traditional terms. Bouncing the dollar probably was
Yeah,
poised to bounce
it
almost on
was
anything.
like $500 for that.
Recently, Treasury's really shrugging at all this, and maybe that's a different kind of status of the Treasury trade at this point, where it's sort of like higher highs.
I think I might hold. I think it might drop this
The
weekend.
overall markets are not overreacting. It's a contained reaction. I think history, the weight of the evidence, the probabilities suggest that if oil is the conduit for how other asset markets are going to react, a pop in oil prices to where they were 2 months ago and what was the lower end of the range for months before that, it's just not going to be that destabilizing. So again, maybe this is the market kind of being a little bit too Pollyanna about it, but I think right now it makes sense. And in fact,
How come they didn't strike back yet? What? It was 10 o'clock last night when I saw the news. It's like over 10 hours now. They didn't hit that. That's weird.
It still looks really normal and routine and on trend. So I think that's kind of understandable based on again how we think these things will most likely turn out, which is obviously not to kind of
We
wind
got 10 seconds.
People are looking at treasuries and saying, oh, maybe they're not safe havens anymore. Maybe the U.S. has messed with that, which I don't buy because it's not like any other global bond is stronger right now. I think the idea is that with Brent crude oil going up, that's inflationary, and that pushes back against lower yields.
Alright, so, oh damn, my spot puts is up $150. I'm gonna take the money, but I'm gonna wait for the dump. It's getting hit 700 now. Damn. They're really behind this now.
Provider of telecommunication services in Latin America. Brett, no surprise, relatively weak. There are some calls on gold today, which is going to, I think, set a all-time weekly high.
Oh, gold's morning.
There's a path to 4K, 12 months. Sure. Obviously, there's kind of
gold went up a lot.
Observable fundamentals. So it's your call for how it's gaining status as a portfolio diversifier. So that should work from here. What I'd be watching
bot's still long.
some of their intermarket relationships.
Last night, damn.
Obviously, Nasdaq's been a big outperformer. It's a little bit of a lag on the downside, but not
6:12 from last night at 9 p.m. my time, so 10 p.m. Eastern time. Wow.
You've even had some days where the Russell 2000, a lot of short covering going on, allowing the Nasdaq to take a break. We'll see if it stays in gear. I mean, that to me, when your
I'm
VIX goes
tempted
above
to
20 or around 20,
tempted to short this shit.
green light to say, okay, we're going to re-risk as much as we were before. But again, we're operating.
I'm bored, so I'm just gonna short.
The earnings season is
Play some
through. I think the
evals.
market's in a little bit of a mode of
I ain't touching my funded yet unless I see some directions.
Reactions to what happened in Israel and Iran overnight. Energy is the only sector that's
Look, Ron was green. What the fuck?
Consumer discretionary is the worst performing sector. Why? It's being dragged down by Carnival Cruise and Norwegian and Expedia, Royal Caribbean. The airlines are under pressure. Some of the Middle East nations had to close their
Holy
airspace
cow.
last night. I mean, this clearly heightened geopolitical risk in the past has
Yeah.
led to less
I did not expect this much of a
I
pump.
think the immediate gut reaction, the defense stocks, no
Nice.
surprise, are also higher.
Orders
This idea
submitted.
of higher military spending, if this could escalate.
I'm still short.
profound impact. So
Just
beyond
on this for fun.
those
There you go.
specifics,
Get it, baby.
What's
up, Gambit?
Well, it's actually flat now for the week.
My SPY puts was up $150, but I didn't sell. I'm just gonna wait. Hopefully they strike again this weekend. I got it for 5. It's I got it for 480. It's at 610 earlier. Now I'm down to 590.
Order filled.
Yeah, I'm just gonna hold this. I want to. I got to September. You know what I mean? It's a long time.
To kind of get in there and try to find this
Order
at least for the
submitted.
mega caps that are going to be able to support the index.
Yeah, that's crazy. We're almost green. We were down -2% last night.
Sometimes can have a little bit of a worse effect on the consumer stocks just because it's not because it's demand driven. But again, we're coming off these low levels, and it's not as if it's necessarily really knocking spending patterns off.
Let me see. When should I short my funded one? Again, I'm so close to payout on TPT now. Yeah, I'm at 26,443, and then Tradify I need $200. Yeah, I just stopped because I don't want to push it, you know. Take my time. Not in a rush.
Momentous the chain reaction could be.
Order submitted.
But I think right now, if it's going to be, isolated response, there's all these impediments to it becoming a broad.
Which account is that, Chris? Is that my funded or?
That the market already on firm footing is going to try to underreact to it. At least initially here.
You didn't pay for Alpha, did you? That shit's expensive.
At least for now.
Okay.
That we have a data dependent wait and
Order
see
submitted.
I don't think that.
Wait, you won and didn't come with free activation?
Next week's meeting. So,
Is it advanced or standard?
what specifically should the equity market be
Order
repricing
submitted.
today based on what we know?
Yeah, don't worry about it.
And it's not a ton
I
if it
get
stays
mine.
this way. But, again, things
I'm looking. Actually, none of them comes with it. Never mind. No, they both has activation fee. That's expensive. Oh, looks like Tradify fixed one of my eval. The reset renewal works, so that might count. So I can gamble for FOMC then.
The professionals a little more extreme. Now, where it's getting nutty is in the retail trader-driven stocks. I keep talking about that. It's almost a separate market. I mean, the IPOs that are flying off of their offering prices, the quantum stocks, the stuff that just is really kind of like gamey lottery ticket stuff is wild. But it's not.
Well, he did say attack would be great for the market. Wow. That fucker is crazy.
As we speak, so we'll see if we can manage to follow their tracks.
Speaking of IPOs, I mean, Chime obviously had a very strong day.
Dude, all he cares about the market. He doesn't care like people are dying and shit. That's one fucked up guy. But as long as they're not dying, you know. Oh, hell yeah. Yep. Got that dump. Hell yeah. Get this money.
Oracle continues its climb. Order submitted. Off of that 13 plus
I got 30 points on that one.
As it sends towards $600 billion.
I showed another one at 768 earlier.
From the database software company, also considered sort of a.
I need to touch these funded, but I'm kind of scared. See the 15-minute, the oscillator is nearing top, so wait for it to turn down and I'll short. Not yet, though. Still got some time. My put's still good. Still up $100. I'm good on that. I'm going to hold.
Sarah, not perhaps enough, at least today, not enough, even though the response I got, I only talked to a couple of people, was quite positive to the numbers.
Yeah, down 6%.
Did you play 150k TPT? Damn it. Last night was easy to pass. I don't know about today now. Yeah, today's gonna be tricky. War is bad, but Trump saying it's good. Like, he's a dumbass. Yeah, they have a data coming out, so just wait. They have like 20 minutes.
You know, 45% tariffs, 35% tariffs, 100-something% tariffs.
Oh, 11?
You don't just go,
Damn.
oh, yeah, business is normal. You know, business as usual. Keep on shipping. I mean, we're
I'm sure Trump got the dip last night. So they say, oh, it's good. Go buy.
You know, the manufacturers don't know what to do. They're like, hey, can I ship this?
Not yet, but whatever Gambit post earlier said Trump saying it's good for the market.
Thing that happened, you know, Liberation Day for business. Yeah, I mean, we're lucky.
Crazy guy.
I mean, it's devastating for small
Yeah, I don't see how.
you know, they don't.
But it's true though. Every time there's a war going on, a couple of days later, the market just moves like crazy. Yeah, CL and Go is running.
It's flat, so it's been a big underperformer, and they've really taken steps to reduce exposure
Yeah,
to
I know.
China.
I saw Go up. I think almost 2%.
Sourcing out of China decreases from 16% in Q1 to 2% in Q4.
Yeah.
Gave those numbers.
Oh, it's crazy.
Order submitted. Exiting the China supply base. The stock, you're right, was $450 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
Order filled.
Order
submitted. Year to date into this, I mean, market's up, what, 3% or so?
Guys, wanted to quickly.
Oh, we're about to be 800 back again. Wow.
Of that acquisition by Nippon at $55 a share. Remember, of course, a few weeks ago, a lot of fanfare, and then the president showing up as well.
Unreal how we pumped so much. 400 points since the low day.
Questions or at least concerns given the timing now. The merger agreement expires in the middle of next week. You need 3 business days to close the deal.
Yeah. I mean, my put's still green, but I don't know how.
The transaction was expected to be reversed, perhaps at a signing ceremony a couple of weeks back. It wasn't.
I got it like a couple of days ago,
We were
too.
close to Nippon
continue to be confident that they are going to get there in terms of the negotiations with the administration around some sort of governance provisions.
I was long last night. I should just left my long overnight. It'd be big money.
Do not actually impact Nippon's stated goal here, and the only goal, and the only thing they're going to be able to do, which is buy the company at $55 a share. And so there is a hope and expectation that perhaps as soon as today, or certainly in the next day or two, and I believe Secretary Lutnick has been involved in this negotiations as well.
$50
They
more.
will get that executive order
Bill.
and then they will find themselves in a position to close the
Order,
deal.
Bill.
3 business days, getting in under the wire in terms of at least what
Order
could be
submitted.
a difficult negotiation to have to extend their merger agreement yet again. There's been some reporting out of Japan and a Nippon executive just reiterating, we don't own this thing.
Yeah, he said that they're requiring a
Order
degree of
submitted.
management control
Yes.
for the deal to go
And
forward.
so figuring out what that means, which still allows Nippon to actually buy the company, has been the issue.
Yeah.
These golden shares, governance provisions.
We got
Again,
15 minutes left with that.
confidence on the Nippon side, they are going to get there, but time is certainly of the essence. Given we kind of thought a few weeks back when we got the original announcement of it that it was going to just happen.
So it's going to happen?
I think it's more likely than not. Yes, Sarah. That said, at this point, given I've already been on the record saying the expectation was they would be able to close at 55, you've got to look at the calendar. But yes.
I mean, they did get President Trump on this side.
What? He's in calls? I thought he was a bear yesterday. He was telling everybody he's gonna dump.
The $14 billion in additional investment's not going to happen. You can imagine
Oh.
politically that's not an outcome they want. But how
Where?
they do get to this governance provision has been proved to be a bit more difficult, and Secretary Lutnick certainly has been involved in that.
Oh, that's 2 days ago.
Add another thing to the plate.
I know. I'm not asking.
Closer look
I wasn't gonna do calls when it's like near all-time high.
news overnight. S&P's down 0.6%. Scott Croner joins us, Citigroup U.S. equity strategist. He's here at Post 9. He raised his year-end S&P target to 6,300 this week from 5,800.
Order, Bill.
So kind of catching up with the market here, I guess, as we continue to make new highs.
Alright, try to fix my shit. There we go.
How do you think that what happened overnight impacts the U.S. equity market, if at all?
Yeah, Sarah, so the way we've been talking about it is, okay, great, we pushed our target higher, 6,300, roughly 5% upside
dropping
the second half of the year. Got that. We know that we're going into this with a, close to overbought condition on the NASDAQ at least.
Order, Bill.
S&P.
I think so, because nothing good about this. It's like it's fake.
Come off the bottom recently.
Order submitted.
So what we had said is
Like this pump is just
probably not
stupid.
going to be a year of summer doldrums. There's going to be ongoing.
What would I know?
volatility
This
that
market's a
comes into
scam.
play, whether it's policy related. Now we have geopolitics coming
Yeah.
into the equation.
Yeah, Trump is coming on soon,
Our
Gal.
presumption when we usually look at these types of activities is obviously where the path you go is escalation or not. But from there, it's like starting point for us is what's the impact going to be on global macro conditions? What's global GDP going to do as a result of this? Okay, and that we'll see
Order,
more on that.
order,
My
Bill.
guess is probably
I'm just shorting on these.
Order submitted.
As far as gun is getting stuck in this area.
Order submitted.
S&P fundamentals. Bottom line, initial take here is be prepared to buy volatility related weakness.
Oh, is that why it's pumping? Japan?
Those who worry about sort of 1970 style.
Are you paying for that news feed?
Tariffs coming in, haven't seen an inflationary impact there yet. But if we do see a sustained higher rate of oil,
Blue Guardian's a scam. Don't fucking use them.
Be careful what you wish for on this. So, and when we look at our S&P
I
earnings
told him not to
profile, for
promote them.
example, started the year looking for 270, we're now at 261 and we had come down. Wouldn't you know, the energy sector has been
No,
the
you said
biggest
commission and then
versus where we
give out
started the
freebies.
year.
It was a
So,
piece of shit
so
scam.
what you end up potentially get here is some relief on the fundamental front for that part
Well,
of the
I don't
market.
know.
I completely get the inflation read through. Again, that's going to have to be a little bit more of a protracted higher
No,
oil
not
price setup,
always.
and there's been a lot of discussion about still many sources.
I
of
used
supply
to
be tapped into.
promote him when it
So
first
we're not
started, and
gonna-
then
we're
one
not
of our
gonna
guy
stretch
didn't get his
too far
pay,
in terms of
and then they tried to ask me to work with him. I said, hell no.
but certainly that's going to be on the radar.
No, it's $500. It's just 500. No, it's just 500.
If it's sustained, make that more difficult.
So I would say
All this FX
most of our view,
firm
we've been
going to
presuming
future, and it's just shady.
another Fed cut or two into the end of the year. Honestly, I think the consumption trends that we've been looking at,
Yeah, whole bunch.
ease, but that's a little bit more of getting ahead of the data, and the Fed has shown a proclivity to want to see the data.
Yeah.
It's really contingent though.
It was 650 to 670 all morning. Now it's 750 to 770.
Company-specific responses, and companies aren't standing still on this. And at the same time, you've got the ongoing AI tailwinds that are probably, if anything, broadening now versus where we were 3 months ago. So we think the underlying inertia from a fundamental perspective is actually in pretty good shape with this issue regarding broader economic activity out there as a potential sore spot, but not a big swing factor yet.
So not necessarily any danger of
cancel this
tariff hurting margins, hurting capex. Right, that's been
eval.
We're not seeing that the capex numbers, if anything, are broadening, right? And what I would come back to at the same time, which is so fascinating about this market, is you're seeing the repurchase activity pick up as well. We've been talking for a while now. The S&P has been in this mode where it's reducing its fully diluted share count by about 1% a year. And we had said earlier in the year, you know, $900 billion in repurchase is probably line of sight. You could get to $1 trillion. The trillion is looking to be pretty conservative at this point. So a lot of free cash flow generation is translating into financial flexibility, capex down the AI path, and this repurchase activity. Companies are taking advantage of volatility in their stock prices to be aggressive on the repurchase front.
I mean, we do have a Fed meeting next week. Nothing's expected, but there are questions about whether the Fed will be cutting sooner rather than later. And I do wonder, with a move like this in oil, whether that changes the conversation.
Yeah, I get it. It's going to take it down the inflation, resurfacing path. I completely understand that, and that's where it's going to be the persistence of oil prices is going to be important. Maybe it keeps them on the sidelines. All we're getting at here is that when we look at the consumption trends, they're showing some signs of weakness, and when we actually look at it through an S&P 500 lens, consumer discretionary and staples within the S&P, Q1 wasn't great. There was a notable deceleration in retail sales activity. So again, you look at the employment data, and everyone's massaging it down, different lenses, and even there, I would say there are some signs of issue here that, in my mind, the Fed potentially could be ahead of, but that's not their profile, particularly with last night's events.
Okay, Scott, thank you for joining us. Appreciate getting instant reaction, especially after you upgraded the market. Scott Broner. Before we end the break, it is time for the bond report. Show you how treasuries are faring this morning. Quiet data day. We do have University of Michigan consumer sentiment at the top of the next hour. Yields are higher. You might have expected them to go lower on a safe haven bid for bonds, but as Mike Santoli said, it's not like you're seeing this mad rush or dash to safety across assets. Gold is a little bit higher, the dollar's a little bit stronger, but if you're balancing out inflation worries against the geopolitical concerns, maybe you get higher yields. 10-year just below 4.4. We'll be right back.
The Bond Report is brought to you by PIMCO, a global leader in active fixed income.
We're doing the double. Going to stay. Aflac Health closed its gap by paying me cash for expenses health insurance didn't cover. Nothing covers gas better than the Aflac stuff. Find an agent, get a quote. You do something. Is it you're hoping to retire?
Well, hope isn't a good retirement strategy. You've worked for a comfortable retirement for years. Now you need to plan for retirement income. Learn ways to avoid common mistakes, like being too conservative or not setting retirement goals. Have someone on
Let's chop this now.
on track.
Call for Fisher's Comfortable Retirement Kit with the help you need to make your retirement a success, including the Investor's Guide to a Comfortable Retirement, 13 retirement blunders to avoid, and maximize your Social Security. Call 1-800-759-4477.
Fisher tailors a plan to keep you on track for a retirement you want. And as a fiduciary, we do better when our clients do better.
Call now for your Comfortable Retirement Kit. Call 1-800-759-4477.
Call us today. You don't have it coming to you unless you plan for it.
If your portfolio is $1 million or more, call 1-800-759-4477.
At AG1, one of our values is the continuous pursuit of excellence. For over 15 years, we have upgraded AG1, adding ingredients that the research said would support nutrient gaps and gut health. It's time for the next generation of AG1. AG1 Next Gen has launched with upgraded B vitamins and probiotic blends backed by multiple gold standard clinical trials. Our customers deserve the best, and the best just got much better. It's time. Yes, the time has
Okay,
come
let's for see. Is
fresh approach.
it free, that Discord? Oh no, that's a website.
It's time to quit the kibble and feed their dogs fresh food from the farmer's dog. Made by vets and
Like the,
delivered right to your door.
like the bot free?
For your dog's needs. It's an idea whose time has come.
Let me see.
Throughout the trading session, working the phones,
If it was real time, that'd be nice.
insights, information, and all of the details that you need.
Order filled.
Oh shit, something happened. Alright, I'll check it out this weekend. I'll add it. I'll make a channel for it.
That was the very latest on that Air India Boeing Dreamliner plane crash that killed
Oh wow, I
one
got
of
pumped.
the 242 passengers on board. Responders combing through the rubble for at least one other black box. We think we have one so far. CNBC TV 18 reporter Medea
canceled.
is live on the scene. Medea, good morning.
Order filled. Order submitted.
His level of short is actually paying off.
Accident in India, in Ahmedabad, is not only one of India's worst aviation tragedies, but also one of the worst aviation tragedies for the world. The major development now is the black box has been recovered by the investigating teams, and that is going to help the team understand what happened in the final moments. How the aircraft crashed is what I would like to talk about. The flight took off normally on the runway, and when it took off, it just crashed within seconds. And before the crash, the pilot had made a mayday call to the ATC. But before the ATC could get back, the connection was lost, and the aircraft crashed onto the building that you can see behind me. It is the hostel for medical students. The building crashed during the lunchtime of these medical students. What led to the massive explosion is because the flight was headed to London, and it had 125,000 liters of fuel. So when it crashed within seconds, you can only imagine what 125,000 liters of fuel could have done to ignite the fire. 242 passengers were on board, including 2 pilots and 10 cabin crew. Everybody, 241 passengers died, and only 1 passenger miraculously
I don't think the
survived
data is gonna
after
move
he
much.
jumped off the emergency
Not
gate
too
that was on
YOLO.
the side of the seat. So that is as far as the plane is concerned. 241 casualties, but the crash also led to several other casualties where we're standing right now where it crashed. So there was
Yeah, 10 out of time, and then 9 out of time it's the Michigan something data.
Fear dead. Then there were people who were walking on the streets. There were animals that were trapped inside the building. So several casualties are expected. The aviation regulator has directed enhanced inspection and has mandated additional maintenance measures for Air India's 787 fleet. This is a major blow to the 787 Dreamliner. Boeing has been involved in previous air crashes, but the 787, it is the first fatal crash for the Dreamliner.
Yeah, because stock went down big time.
Okay, thank you, Medea. Thank you. Let's turn back to rising tensions in the Middle East. Of course,
It's like
this
a little
is Israel's
kid,
strike.
butt hurt and start posting shit,
Overnight.
but then
Gold
take
is
it back.
major rise, oil, as you've seen throughout the session, of course. And by the way, not up as much as it was earlier, but still up some 6.6%. At the highest level it's seen in 3 months. Pippa Stevens was tracking all of that action, a lot of other commodities as well. Pippa.
That's right, David. So oil is still up 6%, but as you said, well off the highs of the session after WTI at one point jumped 14% overnight, underlining the fact that so far no oil supply has actually been disrupted, with several firms saying prices cannot sustain these levels unless barrels actually come off the market. The focus now turns to Iran's response, since that is likely
Talking about what?
will
Tesla?
dictate oil's
Oh yeah.
next move. The country itself is not a major supplier,
Well,
exporting
we missed out on the long on Tesla, big time. I wanted to so bad.
Could disrupt the region's oil supply,
It's too late now.
possibly in Saudi Arabia or Iraq. But the biggest possible impact could be a potential blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, with about 20%
Yeah, it
of
goes
global
down
oil
to 200. I might
flowing
buy.
through the key waterway every
I'll
single
buy some
day.
at 200 and
CNBC
150
friend Wall Street
and then
Bank of Bath
100.
said it's still a low probability scenario, but that the odds are rising as
Yeah.
the situation
So
evolves.
3 minutes.
Also, keep an eye
Looks like it's gonna go on in queue. But 15 minutes near topping out.
The Strait of Hormuz is the sole export route for Qatar.
So maybe
and
when
the
Trump
UAE,
talks later,
which
it might
together
dump.
make up about
I think data might
20% of
pump.
global LNG
That's just
supply.
me.
Guys?
Pippa, thanks. Quite a remarkable story, and it's not just about the raw commodity. The XLE, I think, is up every single day this week, and we know what a laggard it's been on the overall index. Scott Cronin was alluding to earlier, not just on the price action of the shares, but also earnings power too. Let's see what energy can do on overall.
Already did. I mean, for the week to date, it's up almost 5%. So we saw a bit a little bit earlier on this idea that some of the losers were being bought, Carl. But yes, today it is the only sector higher, and that's largely geopolitical, isn't it? I'll lay that.
VIX briefly popped above 20, then back below, currently hovering right around those levels. I would argue the only one corporate story we didn't get to, guys, was this journal piece about Walmart and Amazon considering their
5 puts.
stablecoin, which
Still
is
good. Well, no.
a story.
Procurement way up
The
now.
bigger fallout has been the impact on Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah, it has.
If I make 300 or 400, I'm just gonna take it.
One would expect. You know, the idea is to they pay so much interchange fees that
Oh, this shit's red, right?
billions of transactions that take place is quite significant.
Or
And if
little
you
green.
launch your own stable coin, you might be able to eliminate a lot of that. The
Oh,
Genius
it's not
Act
bad.
that's still working its way through Congress obviously proves very important for this.
Yeah, although Jenny Yellen told us yesterday that she didn't think it actually had enough.
He was up 400, but he got greedy as shit.
Stablecoin, which is interesting given the story that just
Can't be
came out.
greedy in
Also,
this
last
market.
administration, they didn't like crypto or anything or anything around it. This administration does.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here's a use case, I guess, to the point where we haven't really seen it otherwise.
And I mean, stablecoin obviously Circle is another example of that, one of the most popular stablecoins having gone public, and you've seen what's happened there. Similarly, as they move forward as a company and into, continue to innovate, they also may prove a threat, perhaps one day down the road for the Visas and the MasterCard.
It also helps Treasury and the dollar. But that's how they're back. They have to buy them. So the more people, the more companies get into this, more issuers, there's potentially more buying there.
Creates more demand.
Meanwhile, not a lot of movement since the open. Dow's still down about 600. S&P just below 6K. And as Sarah mentioned, energy, the only sector in the green. Stay with us.
For adults with obesity, Zepbound means change.
It's changing what I believe is possible when it comes to weight loss.
Zepbound helps adults with obesity lose weight and keep it off. Don't take it for allergic to it, or if you or someone in your family had medullary thyroid cancer or multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Tell your doctor if you get a lump or swelling in your neck. Stop Zepbound and call your doctor if you have severe stomach pain or a serious allergic reaction. Severe side effects may include inflamed pancreas or gallbladder problems. Tell your doctor if you experience vision changes, depression, or suicidal thoughts before scheduled procedures with anesthesia. If you're nursing, pregnant, plan to be, or taking therapy programs, taking Zepbound with a sulfonylurea or
Rose.
insulin may cause
We
liver
are
failure.
making money.
Side effects include nausea, diarrhea, and vomiting.
How are you?
Which can cause dehydration and worsen kidney problems.
Ask your healthcare provider about Zepbound.
Are you green?
Savings options today.
It's a smart move to get a second opinion.
You didn't get caught last night, right? From the dump.
You definitely do it with medical advice.
That's good.
So why not with your stock market investments? We can help you see opportunities you may be missing. At Henyon & Walsh, it only takes a second to schedule your free second opinion. So what's there to lose? Speak to Henyon & Walsh, the second opinion people.
I started the club to make you a better
Yeah. I was lucky I wasn't home. I was like, oh shit, what happened? And damn. I would have got wrecked.
Get invested. Join the club today. Go to cnbc.com/joinship.
The all-new Dragon Flame Grilled Whopper is here to BK. Bold, juicy, flame grilled, and ready for adventure. Experience the new kind of flame at Burger King. How to train your dragon, only in theaters.
Just 49 keys inside a metal thing from 1958. Or it's the first step to becoming a writer. A book writer director, aka new best friend. Or becoming a chef.
Oh, damn.
Target bill.
Holy shit. It's short. I mean, I went short and got it too and hit it. Woo! That's a nice movement there.
Whatever you want to be, one step can take you
Wow.
everywhere you want to be.
I like that.
Order submitted.
I'm gonna be short again. You pay for this.
Order submitted. It's what makes us us.
Good Friday morning and welcome to Squawk on the Street. I'm Sarah Eisen with Carl Quintanilla and David Faber, live as always for you at Post 9 at the New York Stock Exchange. Stocks are selling off.
I'm shorting at 78 if we hit again.
Israel launched their strike on Iran's nuclear facilities overnight. We are seeing a big move higher in oil. That's where the immediate impact is being felt. The S&P is down 0.8%, coming off of a strong run though for the week and for the past few weeks. We're only, I don't know, 2.5% off record highs for the S&P 500. Energy is the only sector though that is higher right now because of that move in oil prices. Everybody else is lower. Consumer staples are holding up the best. Not a surprise. The defensive names, staples, utilities, healthcare, all outperforming. Financials, for instance, consumer discretionary, and tech. The travel names under pressure in particular. Take a look at treasuries. Not a huge rush towards safe haven assets. Gold's a little bit firmer, the dollar's a little bit firmer, but treasury prices are not. Yields are actually higher, 4.4. Maybe the concern there is on the inflationary impact of higher oil prices right now. We are going to discuss it all hour long. Israel striking Iran, the global markets impact. We've got a great lineup of experts for you to break it all down. Mohammed El-Arian from Allianz, oil and energy expert Paul Sankey, former Trump National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster will all be our guests this hour.
First, let's get straight to Megan Casella with the latest on Israel.
Why should you do the lucid after FMOC, right? Give it out
Good morning again,
so they
Carl.
don't
The
blow
president
it.
making a round of calls to reporters this morning, telling
I'll do
various
that.
outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, that he and the administration knew about Israel's plans to attack Iran before they happened.
What are you
He
trading,
also
Rose?
called the
Which firm are
attacks
you
very
trading now?
successful, said that he had spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, and Netanyahu's office now says the two men do plan to speak again today. All of those comments coming after the president earlier this morning posted that he had
Nice.
given Iran chance after chance to make a deal, but that they just couldn't get it
I'm
done.
$200 away from a payout on Tradify. I'm so scared to touch
Warning
it.
them to make a deal now. He says
Last time I was 300. No, I was 400 already last time. And I ended up blowing it.
Israel here, even after the White House first emphasized overnight that Israel was acting unilaterally and that the U.S. was not involved in these initial attacks.
Yeah, I do.
Iran clearly seeing no daylight between the U.S. and Israel, saying that the attack would not have been possible without U.S. coordination and that the U.S. should be responsible then for the consequences
Did you
of
cut out?
its
I cut out.
action. So as a result, the U.S. now bracing for retaliation in the region, warning Iran against it. Secretary
Yeah,
of
you
State
cut
Marco
out.
Rubio saying that Iran should not target U.S. interests
Yeah.
or personnel. And on Capitol
The
Hill,
ATM is the. I use that a lot for the YOLO strats.
that Israel was clearly within its right to defend itself, and that quote, Iran
Yeah, I love
will face
it.
grave consequences if it responds by unjustifiably targeting U.S. interests. The U.S. now on high alert in the region.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
Departures for non-essential staff earlier this week, and the AP just in the last few minutes now reporting that the U.S. is shifting military resources
giveaway.
around in the region in response to this idea of potential retaliation,
just
guys,
chopping.
as soon as later today.
Megan, to the extent that there had always been an expectation if there was an attack on Iran, it might be led by the U.S. and assisted by Israel, or at the very least in significant coordination ahead of time. Do we know why the Israelis chose now to undertake this attack?
They say that there are a few reasons. They think that this was an existential crisis for them and that it was becoming to the point where Iran clearly did not seem to be getting any closer to a deal with the U.S. There are some reports that some of its uranium enrichment that the U.S. might have been agreeing to or likely to agree to in a deal was going further than Israel could really accept. There were also international bodies that just this week began to warn about Iran's nuclear capabilities and how close they were getting to the ability
to develop a nuclear weapon. So a lot of things there that Israel said it had to happen now, but it does seem like it came for the U.S. side. That's what we're still parsing here between the different reactions so far, but it seems like the U.S. was still trying to pursue these negotiated talks before this type of approach was taken. That's sort of the fine line here. We're still waiting to hear more from the White House on that. Never
Well,
been
that's
the
a
UN nuclear watchdog
slow
board
down.
declares
We
Iran
ain't
in
doing
breach of
anything now.
non-proliferation obligations, something they haven't done before and haven't necessarily been supportive of. Thank you, Megan. Megan Casella. As for world leaders, we're monitoring their reaction to see sort of where everyone is coming in and what might happen next. Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, posting, "The reports of these strikes are concerning, and we urge all parties to step back and reduce tensions urgently. Escalation serves no one in the region. Stability in the Middle East must be the priority, and we are engaging partners to de-escalate. Now is the time for restraint, calm, and a return to diplomacy." I think proving why Europe doesn't necessarily have a seat at the table. As for the Chinese, the foreign ministry saying that they're highly concerned about Israel's attacks on Iran, deeply worried about the potential serious consequences of these actions, and opposes any violation of Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity, opposes actions that escalate tensions and expand the conflict. You know, that's when we start to worry about how the sort of battle lines are being drawn around the world if China would support Iran, if there's some sort of broader confrontation from the U.S. Saudi Arabia also, people are, you know, in the markets, we're always looking to see where they stand publicly, at least. The foreign minister is saying His Highness expresses the kingdom's condemnation of the blatant Israeli aggression against the territory of the Islamic Republic of Iran. His Highness affirmed the kingdom's rejection of the use of force and stressed the importance of dialogue to address disputes. His Highness also emphasizes that the Israeli attack undermines efforts aimed at de-escalation and reaching diplomatic solutions. So there's a lot of sort of nations here calling for diplomatic resolution, which is clearly something President Trump was trying, but the Iranians rejected that. As for the market impact, where you look first, guys, we've been talking it. Obviously, crude oil, WTI, and Brent spiking, although coming off the highs. The U.S. dollar, it's strengthening against other major currencies. Again, not a huge move right now. It's up 4/10, and as Santoli said earlier, was due for a bounce because it's been very oversold and almost at a 3-year low. Gold higher, Bitcoin lower. Just kind of an interesting dynamic there if you're looking for where people go immediately for safety right now. But again, not an extreme move. And then treasuries. We look at treasuries because they're selling off. And during sort of extreme periods of uncertainty and a rush to safety, you see buying of treasuries. Is it a sign that treasuries are no longer safe havens? Probably not, because as I mentioned earlier, you're not seeing extreme buying of any global bonds. It's not like, you know, Swiss bonds are proving a safe haven or Japanese bonds right now. Certainly not European bonds. So we'll continue to monitor the fallout. But David, when you ask about the equity market reaction not being as sharp or severe as you might have thought, you know, the bond market told you that it wasn't necessarily an extreme fear moment right now, whether it's because it looks contained to the region or we don't necessarily know what's going to happen next, whatever it is. That's the market reaction.
Although, to your point, we don't know what's going to happen next. So, yeah, sometimes you would expect the reaction to be more severe, perhaps, because of that, given it raises, obviously, a lot more uncertainty.
I mean, the fact that the U.S. was not involved and is sort of aligned, but in this good cop, bad cop, maybe it just sort of decreases a little bit of the risk of something bigger and broader for now.
Yep. Although, I mean, people are looking at the president's post this morning where he says he told Iran that this could be worse than they know and that the United States makes the most advanced and lethal military equipment in the world. I mean, that's the kind of language that makes you have to second guess whether or not we're truly going to remain in a non-participatory role.
That is the whole question.
Yeah.
What is the U.S. role going to be in all of this? And what does the U.S. need to do? And how much progress has Israel made overnight when it comes to dismantling? And what else do they need to do? Because even the Israeli authorities have said this is not.
Shit, Greg. Hell yeah.
This is going to
How
continue.
many days you gotta flip? 2 more days?
Let's talk some more about the market reaction this morning. We also just got the preliminary.
Hell yeah, get that shit to pay out, man.
Better than expected, coming in at 60.5. We were looking for 54, and the one-year inflation drops from 6.6 down to 5.1. That's a pretty big drop. Joining us this morning, Allianz Chief Economic
just woke
Advisor
up.
Mohamed El-Arian is with us. Mohamed, it's a treat for us to be able to get your take on the news of the day. I did read this morning that
Did you make money? You're the one that's killing it.
Middle East is net maybe stagflationary. Does that explain
Nice.
some of the action in treasuries?
It is taxationary. The question, Carl, is how taxationary is it? And that's a function of what you just talked about. How many more attacks are we going to see from Israel? What will retaliation look like? So we don't know, but the direction of travel is clear. What's happened to Treasury is due to something else. The world is losing confidence in the sovereign side of the U.S. So if you're looking for safe haven flows, you won't find them in the Treasury market. Why? Because the world starts overweight the U.S. So there isn't much appetite to increase your overweight on the bond side. The other thing that's good for the equity market is you hear investors distinguishing between the sovereign side and the corporate side. And that's why the equity sell-off is not as big as you would have expected otherwise.
So those who are looking to either lighten up U.S. or hedge their U.S. weight, they're going to do it on the sovereign debt side as opposed to equities. Is that fair?
That's fair. They can't do it very quickly because it's not clear where you go to. There's nothing to replace the U.S. But what you're seeing them do is go little by little to many places. The Financial Times
Why we're
a
dropping?
couple of days ago, gold now has surpassed the euro.
Guess I just wait for the bot to short now.
Central bank international reserves. And that's a function of people looking to reduce their U.S. bond exposure.
That's how they use code.
But, I mean, we haven't really seen evidence of that, Mohammed, in the auctions. There's been plenty of demand for that. And when there's a weak economic report, people rush back into treasuries. And then, like I said earlier, you know, it's not like the European bonds are rallying right now. It's not, it could just be that the takeaway from this is that we might see higher inflationary pressure, as you said, and ultimately that's going to make it harder for the Fed to cut rates.
Yeah, I wouldn't look at the opens too much because there's a lot of stuff maturing. So you really want to look at net holdings. That's what really matters. And the evidence is net holdings is coming down. Also, Sarah, treasuries have decoupled from every single correlation that we used to rely on. You know, they sell off on a risk on day, they sell off on a risk off day. They sell off with the dollar stronger, they sell off with the dollar weaker. So what we're seeing is treasury yields have become less predictable compared to what's happening elsewhere in the market. What we're also seeing is gold has also broken its correlations. And
Let's see if the bot's gonna short.
Despite what's happening elsewhere. So I think if you look deeply, you would be worried. And that's part of a bigger issue, is that the global order relied on the U.S. right at the core of it. And what we are seeing are little pipes being built around the U.S. This is a very gradual fragmentation of the global order, but it's something we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, well, it's a significant statement to say that it's no longer seen as an absolute safe haven in times of turmoil, Mohammed. So I'm curious, though, what could change that dynamic or exacerbate it on the other side? I mean,
Who's trading? Heard someone trading over the field.
Is this a response as well to sort of the tariff
Rose, I know it's
regime
you.
and some hostility from other countries? What's behind it?
I think first, policy induced volatility.
Jamie, how you make 4,500 with that? Were you shorting it? Max 10 contract? That's
The
good.
most predictable player. The second is the extent to which the market implied
Good job, dude. One more and you can pass.
have gone all over the place. Remember, we started
Yeah.
the year with less than 10%.
Once you get on a pro, it's easy for you to milk that one.
Now we're back below 30%. That's not supposed to happen for the largest economy with the most mature institution and the most dynamic private sector. People are paying attention to that. So what you need is more predictable policies, and you need.
Hey, they did say it was an error. Huh?
In US growth,
Oh yeah. Future Elite did mess up. I got my money. I got $200 back. Hell yeah.
Mohammed, on another day, we might be talking about trade and the progress.
Yeah, you know that the 5 points, whatever. So they did fix it.
India is hardening its position.
That's what I'm talking about.
Hardening its position regarding some of the auto tariffs. Do you get a sense that at those negotiating?
Yeah, they say that 5.25 is not the same as 5 points on NQ, and they say, oh, it has to be under $10. Like the commission makes it under $10. But at least they fixed it. I wasn't gonna be mad about it. I don't really care. Just it wasn't a big payout. Just fun. Well, because it's me, but imagine someone else. Yeah, it's not fair. I don't like to start shit with anybody unless it's wrong, you know what I mean?
Statement here about the treasuries. You yourself said there's not many alternatives. So where do you go if you're looking for safety right now? Is gold really the only spot?
And
No.
that's a dilemma for a lot of people, including sovereign wealth funds. They know
I don't know who sent the email, but the guy I talked to just wanted to mod. Yeah. I kind of explained to him it's wrong.
It is not this for that, because there is nothing to replace a dollar. So what you're going to see is a fragmentation of the system. And it's something that will hurt the US. And that's why it's really important to step back.
They just gotta change the coding. Just the coding is wrong on it. It's not the points it's doing it. I think it's the amount. Instead of putting $10, then he put under $9. Considered scrape scalp.
Mohammed, our thanks to you on an important day. I appreciate it very much. Mohammed El Arian.
Here's our roadmap for the rest of the hour. Former Trump National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster joins us with his first take on Israel and Iran and what could come next.
Plus, oil expert Paul Sankey is going to join us right here at Post 9. We'll talk about, of course, what's next for oil prices as well.
Talk to former Dallas Fed President Fisher about this new inflationary input ahead of next week's Fed meeting. Very important as we're now in the blackout window. Big Show continues as Squawk on the Streets back after this.
It is my honor to welcome the hardest working software on television to the public market.
It's just all about execution.
Can I have Lucid? No, kite.
It's a smart move to get a second opinion. You do it when you're looking for a contractor. You definitely do it with medical advice. So
Oh, you're Lucid?
market investments.
We try to get a payout. You're milking everybody else but Lucid.
Takes a second to schedule a free second opinion.
Oh.
So what's there to lose?
Oh, you don't like those DLO, that's why.
The second opinion people.
Discovering innovation today helps drive growth tomorrow. As a leading global asset manager, PGIM has established a track record of helping investors capitalize on growth opportunities.
Greedy
Investment,
guy.
shaping tomorrow.
That's live music. Get ready to Bonnaroo right from your living room as the biggest artists take the stage. Bonnaroo Music Festival. Streaming live to all of new subscribers. Presented by Ray-Ban Meta. Iconic style meets Meta AI. A new How to Train Your Dragon menu is now at BK. Get it before it disappears. Oh, toadless. Bold, tasty, and dangerously delicious. How to Train Your Dragon. Only in theaters.
Introducing full captain. New style, new color, new structure, new feel. Maybe. No moves.
At Ace, however you grill, we've got the perfect one for you. Because only your local Ace has all the best brands in one place, like Weber, Big Green Egg, Traeger, and Blackstone. That sounds pretty.
Gold's dropping? Let me see. It was up 2% last time I checked. Oh yeah, it dropped. Dropped a lot. No, it's not that much. Let's see. Yeah.
Oil prices spiking overnight following Israel strikes on Iran amid fears, of course, that the conflict will become broader in scope. Joining us now is Sankey Research President and, of course, lead analyst Paul Sankey. Good to have you here at Post 9, Paul. So, what is your overall? I assume you're getting a lot of questions. You got the answers for us in terms of what this is all going to mean for the commodities you follow?
I think the most interesting thing is the speed of the move here that we've seen in oil. It's actually as fast as we saw during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So if you look at when I was last on, May the 5th, talking bearish, we've had a 25% up move in crude prices. And as you know, recently the oil market hasn't been characterized by reacting to geopolitical risk as much as you would think. on this occasion, we're doing a Russia-Ukraine.
Okay, since I got the pass, should we do some giveaways on YouTube then?
Ongoing, we don't know. So far, it seems they're not attacking oil infrastructure, so that will relieve the market somewhat. But the next question is, where's the spare capacity, and how can we handle this if it is a major outage? And the first thing that we observed in our note this morning is it's not in the SPR, right? We've drawn down the SPR, and now Chris Wright, Energy Secretary, says it needs to be fixed. So that's your first option out. The second option, as you know, is Saudi, UAE. They both have a lot of spare capacity, probably 2 million in Saudi, 1 million in UAE. Then you add Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, you get another million or so, and you debate whether the million in Russia is real. So you get towards 5 million spare, but I just gave you the location of all that stuff, right? So it's in the Gulf of Arabia. And so the market, I think, here is pricing real fear about spare capacity, which is why the move's been so aggressive. Now the demand impact, the economic impact, all the other impacts, no attack actually happening. Obviously, the fear is going to be that we now collapse back down again. And the likely equivalent, we think, is probably the Saudi attack that occurred on Kuwait, their major facility that took out 7 million barrels a day. And that was a relatively short-term impact. But what's interesting here, further to what I was saying last time I was on, is that the market is globally tightening towards less spare capacity, and so these OPEC increase announcements are being taken quite bullishly by the market because it's obviously reducing Saudi and other spare capacity. A simple example would be that
dang, that's a big drop. What happened?
Because they're cheating so much. So it's a very interesting dynamic that the oil prices moved as much as we thought.
How much does Iran ship in terms of oil? Right.
The key focus is Kharg Island, and it's about 1 million barrels a day, basically, to China. So it's significant amounts of oil, and we think the administration has been turning a blind eye. They haven't been aggressively enforcing sanctions in the way that they could because they want lower oil prices. So obviously, this tape right now is
over 100 points. I'm gonna cancel my short. It's too late now.
Order canceled.
Does the price change alter the equation for producers here? Would they get more willing?
It's really interesting because the thing we were talking about last time is that the producers have been very proactive in cutting capex early, and Saudi has cut capex. Saudi dropped rigs in the last week. So this is a very interesting dynamic about the fact that, no, I don't think there'll be a huge response to this move.
Butt's long at 6.
Because everybody in oil is bearish on the fundamental
6:12 from last night.
To be very oversupplied in 2026. So, it's a very interesting moment here that we have this major spike at a peak time for global demand because of driving season.
Earlier in the week, the FT did a piece on how U.S. production might actually drop year on year for the first time since the pandemic. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I do. I think it could, and it's a huge moment. I mean, certainly we have major CEOs such as Diamondback saying that that's what they're anticipating, absolutely. And the capex cuts, they said, as soon as we got to within 60, they were cutting capex. That's above their free cash flow levels, right? So they're very proactive, and so is Saudi. Saudi, I think, is very much preparing for downside by lowering their own capex. So this has come completely counter to where the market was positioned, including me.
We incorporated.
YM is because of Boeing.
Attacking other facilities, for example, of the Saudis, or is that going to bring in? If it were to occur, would that bring another spike?
Yeah, I mean,
that plane crashed last night or yesterday.
Serious missiles up their sleeve, so we're sort of that clearly is a major fear that they haven't unloaded everything they've got. I think the suspicion is they have, that they really don't have, like Russia, they don't have a lot of military power in reality. But we'll see. It's very scary, obviously, because I'm not here to say they won't attack. I'm sure they want to.
What about the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, that's obviously the major concern. I think Iran would know that all hell will break loose if they shut the strait. I'm sure Donald Trump is going to be.
That'll sound fun. Yay! Bye. Oh, damn! It feels to be jobless, right, buddy?
It's a war.
Feels so good.
That's exactly what Piper
We just
said.
wake up, trade, and go eat.
Like the exercises that we got in 24.
Well, I would say that Israel and Iran have been at war for probably 20 years now.
It is a good life.
So, it's not a total outside the box shock. Israel attacked Iran. I think you could read between the lines and see that it was coming, kind of thing. If certainly a retrospect.
What's going on with this DDoSing? Now my company website's down.
I'm very hopeful that Iran will attack any infrastructure, and so far they haven't, as best we know.
These hackers, man.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Still ahead, former Trump National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster said in January that there was a, quote, 100%
Yeah, that's the
chance
crackhead trading.
that Israel would target Iran's nuclear infrastructure. He's going to join us with his take now that it's happened. Plus, former Dallas Fed President Richard Fisher on how this new wave of uncertainty and the rise in oil prices could impact the Fed, which does meet next week. We'll be right back.
Don't turn it off.
With income products from Bright House Financial, you can turn a portion of your portfolio
I like that
into
sound.
guaranteed lifetime income for whatever the occasion calls for. Bright House Financial, built for what's ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want to know where to invest $1,000 right now? Well, forget about AI, quantum computing, electric vehicles, cryptocurrencies, or robotics. A little-known technology is projected to become roughly 10 times bigger than all of these technologies combined. The World Economic Forum says that it's arguably the most exciting human discovery since fire. And billionaire entrepreneur Vinod Khosla says you can make 1,000 times your money by investing in this phenomenon. But if you want to claim a stake in this revolution, you have to act fast. We're about to cross what
Give
Barron's
me
calls
one
an
big
impending
dump and I'll
tipping
try to
point.
long get
So you want to know how to
$200.
get started with this technology? Go to the website on the
Nah, I'm
screen,
gonna wait for
and I'll show
Monday.
you how. Hi, my name is Whitney Tilson. I'm a former hedge fund manager. I've been featured in virtually every single major financial publication and TV show. How did I accomplish all this? I'll tell you this. I don't come from money. In fact, my parents were teachers who met in the Peace Corps. The secret to my success is that I have a knack for
Oh, I
finding
see my puts.
explosive
My puts
investments
is up
in massively
180.
disruptive technologies.
I might
I
just
bought
sell.
Amazon in 1999. I
Let's see
bought
where
Apple
Spotty's
in
at.
2000. And I bought Netflix in 2012. Investments like that helped me grow my hedge fund from $1 million to $200 million and nearly triple my clients' money.
No,
The
ES looks like it's
technology that
gonna
just
drop
landed
a
on my
lot
radar
later.
might be the most disruptive and lucrative one I've
Oh, I'm
ever
gonna
seen.
hold on to this.
One market insider
I think we're gonna
predicted
dump
that it
more.
could be even more important than the Industrial Revolution. And I want to give you, free of charge, the name and ticker symbol of the company at the center of this disruption. You don't have to give me your email address, or credit card, or anything like that. Just go to the website on the screen now.
Down, up, right, left, inside, out. Sometimes it's hard to make sense from nonsense. Go beyond the headlines. A trusted global perspective. Economists know which way is up.
With exclusive access to market-moving interviews and stock picks. Become a smarter investor with the power of CNBC Pro. Go to cnbc.com/getpro now.
Time now for a CNBC News update. Courtney Reagan has that for us. Courtney.
Hi, good morning, David. Well, federal appeals court ruling late last night that the Trump administration can, for now, maintain control of National Guard members in California and continue deploying them in Los Angeles. That order coming shortly after a lower court said the National Guard deployment was illegal and violated the 10th Amendment and directed President Trump to return control of troops to California. Trump deployed the Guard following protests over immigration raids. The appeals court will hold a hearing on the case next Tuesday. A federal judge this morning blocked part of President Trump's executive order to revamp elections, halting requirements to show proof of citizenship when registering to vote, and blocking the effort to ban states from counting mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day. And Ukrainian officials confirmed today that they have received the bodies of 1,200 soldiers killed in the war with Russia. The return of the bodies was part of an agreement reached between Kiev and Moscow in their latest rounds of talks earlier this month. Carl, back over to you.
Courtney, thank you very much, Courtney Reagan. Coming up this morning, former Trump National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster is going to be with us with more on Israel's airstrikes on Iran, Iran's drone response, and what might come next. Meantime, check out the move lower in travel names this morning. Airlines like United, Delta, some cruise lines, Carnival, hotels like Marriott leading some of those declines. Stay with us.
Dang, it's dropping.
Seems that the gladiators hit the
Innovation changes everything. With one investment, you can access the NASDAQ 100 innovators who are rethinking the world. Before investing carefully, really consider fund investment objectives, risks, charges, expenses, and more. Prospectus at investor.com.
When logic bends, when certainties shatter, when left is right and right is left, which way do you turn? Go beyond the headlines. A trusted global perspective. The Economist. Know which way is up.
When you're actively trading, the fees really start to add up. Public is the only platform that offers rebates on your option trades, which help offset those costs. It's a simple way to
Big
help
Pat
me
just went
keep more
short.
of what I earn.
I know how to make slick-looking goggles/glasses, but I have no idea how to make slick-looking social media stuff.
Yeah, I bought one short at 627.
Some people like doing things the hard way, like doing
Got
their
my payout.
finances with a spreadsheet instead of using Quicken. Quicken pulls all your financial info together in one place and updates it automatically. How easy is that?
Life is always changing, and there's
Yeah.
that couch. and
Earlier,
that
it was
gathering around
deducted like
reviewing
400 something dollars on
for
a
entertaining the next. And tomorrow,
scalping, but they messed up, so
because
it's
love
only
that
200.
adapts to life.
Goldilocks needs a place of her own, and fast. Thankfully, she's on Redfin. They update their listings every 2 minutes. And with so many options, she's bound to find exactly what she wants.
This one's just right. She
Come on, go with me. The sun goes down.
Wait, I thought Venmo was for paying people.
Yeah, and for everything else.
I might just follow the short on small sizing on this one. I'm gonna follow it.
Bill. Order submitted.
635 is my short.
Now you can Venmo everything.
Okay.
Get the Venmo debit card, get up to 15% cash back.
Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. Stocks just hitting session lows right now. We're down over 1% on the S&P. The Dow's down around 700 points. Our next guest said back in January there was a quote 100% chance that Israel would target Iran's nuclear infrastructure this year. And that is exactly what happened overnight. Joining us now is Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster, former National Security Advisor and Hoover Institution Senior Fellow. Lieutenant General, it's great to have you on a day like today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, hey, sir. Thanks for having me.
So how are you thinking about what happens next?
Well, I think what we can anticipate is that Iran will respond in whatever way they can. Their ability to do so, though, is greatly diminished because of the decisive actions that Israel took, not only in Gaza against Hamas, but against Hezbollah in Lebanon, where Hezbollah had 250,000 or so rockets and missiles pointed at Israel. So Israel has secured
Oh,
its borders.
man, why when I got in the short, it started pumping.
Cascaded after the effective attacks on Hezbollah, but they still have a lot that they can do through their proxies in the region.
Yeah, I should have waited. It's trying to
They could shut
follow
down
the
shipping.
bot. Well,
Bob Elman's
it's okay. It's not a funded
in
one.
the Persian Gulf. They could attack their Arab neighbors if they think their Arab neighbors were complicit in this. If, for example, Iran is unable to export oil, they might try to ensure that others can't export oil as well. We could anticipate, I think, cyber attacks, but also I think, Sarah, what we could see are terrorist attacks through Iranian-supported, Iranian-sponsored terrorist organizations around the world. Remember back in 1992 and 1994, we had the attacks against first an Israeli embassy in Argentina, and then a Jewish community center, which killed over 100 people. They shot down a Panamanian airline around that same period of time. There have been many assassination attempts across the world. You have a former U.S. Secretary of State and national security advisors and others still under threat here in the United States. So I think Iran will do everything they can to respond, but their ability to do so has been greatly diminished, largely because of the decisive actions that the IDF has taken, the Israeli Defense Forces, and their intelligence capabilities, as well as the U.S. and the integrated air defense. Remember, Sarah, the attacks on the Aramco oil facilities years ago?
Yes.
Since that time, air defenses in the region have improved dramatically.
Well, yeah, I'm curious how you reacted to how it all unfolded, the strike itself. The more we learn about it, it just shows the amazing capability of Israeli intelligence, what modern day warfare looks like, the fact that they were so embedded inside Iran that they were able to take out these key figures. How do you assess it?
Well, absolutely. The Mossad has done a fantastic job in penetrating Iran because, of course, this is an existential threat to Israel. One of the commanders killed, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, said on television a few years ago that the goal of the IRGC, the goal of the theocratic dictatorship in Iran, was to wipe Israel off the map. So Israel's determined that Iran not get the most destructive weapons on earth. This is the Begin Doctrine that goes back to the 1981 strikes against a nuclear facility in Iraq, as well as the 2007 strike against a Syrian nuclear facility. But of course, this was orders of magnitude much larger than either one of those strikes. And I think what it's the beginning of is probably a sustained campaign to block Iran's path to a nuclear weapon.
So President Trump hailed it as excellent and warned that there's a lot more to come. But how much longer, and I think that's an important question for investors as we try to understand the scope of all of this from here, how much longer can the U.S. sort of let Israel handle it without being forced in, stepping in to help, to defend, and to also make sure that this existential threat goes away?
Well, sir, it depends in large measure, I think, on the degree to which Iran can respond and the degree to which Iran threatens Israel, but also threatens U.S. facilities in the region. Remember, Iran has, since 1983, attacked U.S. military and other installations across the region with the very devastating attacks on the U.S. Embassy and then the Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983. Remember the Khobar Towers bombing in Saudi Arabia in 1996. And then the hundreds of attacks that Iran has conducted through their proxies against U.S. facilities in the region in recent years. And of course, Iran working through their proxies in Iraq during the height of the Iraq War were responsible for killing about 600 U.S. servicemen and women through these proxies using the roadside bombs that they manufactured in Iran.
Order filled.
So I think we'll see
Order
those
submitted.
kinds of actions, and then the United States, of course, will have to defend itself. And if there's an effort to launch more drones, as we saw already, and more missiles, if they have that capacity, which I doubt, it would require an integrated air defense. But of course, still, in air defense, as Israel has demonstrated, it's important to be able to shoot down arrows. But ultimately, a good air defense requires also killing archery.
Damn.
And so it's likely that the United States could be drawn in to a sustained conflict against Iran.
Yeah. Sir, until recently, obviously, the U.S. was pursuing an agreement with Iran to deter its nuclear ambitions. Given you obviously served Donald Trump in 2017 and 18 as National Security Advisor, I'm curious who you think has the upper hand here in giving him advice, who we should be looking towards in terms of whether it's his National Security Advisor, Tulsi Gabbard, or Secretary of State Rubio, or Hegseth at Defense, or any other voices you think in this administration will have actual influence with the president?
Well, David, that's a good question. I would have said Michael Waltz about a month ago, and I think he was serving the president well. I think I was disappointed to see him leave. Since that time, there's been an effort to really Security Council staff, and the National Security Council staff is pretty darn important because that's what allows you to coordinate and integrate efforts across the departments and agencies. Okay, get the president, best analysis and best advice, but multiple options that allows the president to look at relative advantages and disadvantages and weigh cost and risk. Other presidents have tried to diminish the National Security Council staff until there's a crisis. And then they thought, wow, I really need to use this thing. This was Truman's experience during the Korean War. for example, Kennedy's experience when he didn't use a formal process, and that led to, you know, the Bay of Pigs. So I think what you don't have at this time, I think, is an organization that has the mandate, you know, to do that coordination and integration function. So it'll be individual voices, as you've alluded to. Hey, you know, President Trump is consistent on a lot of things, right? He's consistent on border security and deregulation and what he calls energy dominance and so forth, burden sharing by allies and partners. But he does carry a kind of a dissonance with him in connection with U.S. military
Yeah, this
intervention
show's not
or
looking
actions
good.
abroad. So, for
Ouch.
example, he understands well the threat from Iran. He took that very important action to kill Qasem Soleimani back in 2020. But then he also, though, tends to see the Middle East as kind of a mess to be avoided. And there are some of his advisors who are advising him, hey, don't let Israel drag you into another, you know, so-called endless war in the Middle East. How that dissonance is reconciled will be important. Because I think at this stage, it is vitally important to send a very strong message to Iran not to escalate further. And I think there should be additional efforts across the departments and agencies. This is why it's important to have an integrated response here to put a lot more financial pressure on Iran so that they don't have the funds to reconstruct their terrorist networks in the region, and also so we can help convince the Iranian people it's time for a change in the nature of this government, such that the Iranian government would cease its permanent hostility to Israel, its Arab neighbors, the United States, who they call it, you know, the regime calls the Great Satan, and the West broadly. And this really corrupt theocratic dictatorship is what has really resulted in the destitution of what should be a very rich country.
So you see this as the beginning of the end for the Ayatollah?
Well, you know, I hope so, right? The Ayatollah is up in years. You know, it's not certain how long he'll be around. But what is clear, though, is that the revolutionaries, the really, you know, the extreme Islamists are in power in Iran. I mean, there used to be a struggle. There were at certain times in recent Iranian history between the Republicans and the revolutionaries, but the revolutionaries won. They won, and they're destroying their country. So, in recent protests, Sarah, you know, we saw you know, people chanting in the street. The problem is not over there, meaning with us. The problem is right here. And in many of the protests that we've seen, some of them which have gone nationwide, you could see the really deep anger at what the regime is preventing the Iranian people from achieving, which is their tremendous potential.
Well, this is why Prime Minister Netanyahu always addresses the Iranian people separately when he you know, takes action against the Iranian regime. I highlighted some of the commentary and initial reactions from Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE. I mean, countries that are seen to maybe privately support something like this, but publicly very much not so. And I just wonder if you think, what you think the dynamic is there and what's really going on.
Well, Iran has done a really good job with propaganda and disinformation across the region. If you look at some of the Iranian Arab language television programs, they're really slick. And what they do is they interject a little bit of truth and then they warp the understanding. Really, the truth is that Iran is pursuing a strategy that is really based in expending every Arab life to accomplish their objectives in the region. They have fomented sectarian conflict across the region, the cycle of conflict that you've seen in Iraq, in Yemen, in Syria, with destructive effects, to keep the Arab world perpetually weak and enmeshed in conflict, so they could accomplish their broader objectives of pushing the United States out of the region as the first step in destroying Israel and killing all the Jews, which they tried to do with the activation of the Ring of Fire on October 7th, 2023, and the subsequent entry into that conflict the next day by Hezbollah, by the proxy army in Syria, and by Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas in the West Bank as well. That failed. So I think now's the time to have a really good conversation, a focused conversation with the populations across the Middle East to expose all the suffering that Iran has caused, and to not allow them anymore, you know, to cause the problem and then blame somebody else for their murderous acts. Many of the countries in the region have large Shia populations, and Iran has done their best to create relationships with them. In Iraq, for example, in Bahrain, and in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia. So I think this is what helps explain some of the public messaging that is probably out of step with what those leaders really feel, which is kind of a sense of being
Let's do this giveaway before Chuck comes on.
from Iran's nuclear capabilities as well.
Hanging on every word. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General, Returning Master. We appreciate the time.
Giveaway.
Also author of his book, War with Ourselves. We interviewed him just 7 months ago, Carl, on the show, talking ahead of the elections about how Iran would be a huge difference in policy between a Harris administration and a Trump administration. And now here we are.
Still to come this morning, former Dallas Fed President Fisher weighs in on what the escalation in the Middle East might mean for the inflation picture and the Fed. As we go to break, check out some of the biggest decliners on the S&P. As we mentioned earlier, Visa and MasterCard responding to this report that Walmart and Amazon may be exploring their own stable coins. Stay with us.
I was ready to start building my credit, but I didn't want a credit card with fees or expensive debt. So I got the Chime Credit Builder card, and I use it for everything. There's no annual fees, no interest, and my score is up 100 points. Join me at Chime.com.
Only the ServiceNow platform connects every corner of your business, putting AI agents to work for people.
Like secret agents?
No, more like autonomous minions that you control.
Do what?
Well, Jim's agents resolve simple customer issues, and Patty's agents flag network problems.
Proactively.
Yep.
Loving my agents.
Wait, you all have agents?
Oh, yeah. And on the ServiceNow platform, everyone's agents work together, so everything works better.
And I have agents?
Baby.
This is a premium, hand-selected bacon wrap filet mignon that's aged for tenderness and trimmed to perfection. This is a necktie. What do you think Dad wants for Father's Day? Visit omahasteak.com/TV to order
money
the
came
Dad
in
One
quick
package today
from
for just $99.99
Teachers
and
Elite.
will include 8 additional burgers free. So get into Dad. Not this. This. Go to omahasteak.com/TV today because Dad deserves it. Just a little Father's Day wisdom from Omaha Steaks.
I guess I'm not the easiest person to please. I like things just right. That's why I love Redfin's home recommendations. They know what I want even before I do. A home that's just right.
Yes. Yeah. This is the one. She fixes, she manages, she prevents. Because maintaining this space transports her to this space. The industrial grade product you need. Call, click, or stop by. Granger for the ones who get it done.
At Public, the high-yield cash account's a no-brainer. I know my money's working hard for me, and I know I can access it anytime I need it. It's very simple. Better rates mean faster growth, and that's exactly what I need.
It is my honor to welcome the hardest working software on television.
Been 3 chapters in the company's life. This one is the one I'm most excited about.
Discovering innovation today helps drive growth tomorrow. As a leading global asset manager, PGIM has established a track record of helping investors capitalize on growth opportunities. PGIM Investments, shaping tomorrow today.
Never miss a moment. The reconciliation bill will not only give certainty to the markets about the extension of the current tax regime that exists, but it also adds new stimulus.
I would expect inflation on a year-over-year basis this year to shoot up to at least 3%, or slightly over because of the tariffs.
People's anticipation is like things are going to get worse, but they haven't gotten worse.
Oil prices spiking following Israel's strike on Iran, adding an inflationary input ahead of the Fed's meeting next week. Meantime, we just got a positive signal from the data. An early read on Michigan consumer sentiment for June coming in well above expectations. Also, inflation expectations fell. Joining us is former Dallas Fed president and CNBC contributor.
You got 6 minutes, okay?
So, Richard, is it your view that this is just going to make the Fed even more patient on its stance to do anything because it has to see how long the sort of oil spike lasts?
Yo, Gamba, get on YouTube
That's been where they are.
and get that money.
You summarized it well.
Remember, they're trying to make decisions under conditions of extreme uncertainty right now. Really don't know how the tariffs are going to work their way through. We did have oil come down to the $60 level during April, and now it's been coming up and up and up, and now it's
You got
spiked
10
today.
points, right?
We'll have to
If
see
you
what the
don't worry about it.
consequences are.
You can't get in.
Was brilliant in giving us an analysis just now, all the possible consequences. So a lot of volatility,
Yeah, watching
global
chat.
uncertainty. This adds to it, makes it worse, and I think it makes the Fed's job more difficult.
I mean, I sort of think that's why that we're seeing yields higher. This prospect of more inflation from oil, the Fed being on hold for longer and not being as eager to cut rates on the back of what's been better inflation reports. Mohammed
There
Al-Arian
you
came
go.
on
Keep
with us
dropping.
earlier and said,
I need
well,
to get on my
it's
short.
also less of a safe haven right now. What do you think is happening?
Well, I think that's true. And by the way, I know the president likes to beat on big
Stop.
dollars. The Fed is not affecting longer term rates. The 10-year, which we keep hoping will come down below 4.3, it sort of bounces on that and comes back up. Here's another instance here. So I think we all have to look at, even though we had a good 10-year option, a good 30-year
Pre-loan
option,
is in
just
spy
now,
puts now.
it's just very hard for those longer term rates to come down here, given all this uncertainty, and particularly given a lack of comfort as to where.
Did you ask
inflation
him
is
about
likely to
his
go longer term.
QQQ calls?
Expectations just came down, but they're still very, very high in the fives on the inflation side, on the consumer surveys. So I think we're going to be in this territory for quite some time. And by the
Maybe
way,
to post
these
on
are
Twitter.
normal interest rates historically. They could pressure higher. We'll have to see what happens on the inflation front in particular, and oil prices are leading us there. They depressed the last read on inflation, the last CPI, and also the PPI. So we're just going to have to see how this works its way through.
A lot of attention lately on the so-called soft data, which is consumer sentiment and inflation expectations, because there was a big drop in sentiment after tariffs and a big spike in inflation expectations. Today's report showed the opposite. And Richard, when you break this down, it is so partisan. For instance, June, Democrat sentiment 40, Republican sentiment 94.2. And the same goes for inflation expectations. How much stock should the Fed really be putting in these numbers?
I don't think they put much in the political numbers. By the way, the Fed is the opposite of political. And
I don't think 10-year yield does anything to the market anymore.
Well, Sarah, be careful of instant analysis. These are
Yeah.
numbers. You have to sort through
Because
them,
Kang used to
think about
use
them,
it for his
and you
option,
have to
but
see how long they're likely
didn't
to
do
continue.
anything.
Again, total conditions of uncertainty right now. And that's difficult to make a monetary policy decision unless they see something in the credit markets that we're not seeing, because they can read the entrails better than we can. But if this leads to disruption in your credit markets, then they're going to have to act.
Stagflation, how big of a risk?
It's a risk. I keep a picture of Paul Volcker. You can't see it behind me, but it's a big one. A note he wrote to me many, many years ago before he died. And we have to have that kind of steady hand, willing to take risks, but also to brave political pressure, which he did. And I think Powell is doing a very, very good job of that right now.
Okay, want to see the picture sometime. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.
Former Dallas Fed.
When we come back this morning, what today's developments in the Middle East mean for defense stocks when we continue in a minute.
It's a smart move to get a second opinion. You do it when you're looking for a contractor. You definitely do it with medical advice. So why not with your stock market investments? We can help you see opportunities you may be missing. At Henyon & Walsh, it only takes a second to schedule your free second opinion. So what's there to lose? Speak to Henyon & Walsh, the second opinion people.
The two most powerful words in the world that we know are what if? And today, thousands of organizations are saying, what if? With the power to act on those words like never before.
Do this giveaway before Trump comes
What
on.
if you could empower every employee with a limitless digital workforce? Listens, learns, and acts
Order filled.
Oh, wow.
every day.
Order canceled.
Add it to my shorts.
With AI in Salesforce. It's called Agent Force. Agent Force turns your vision into
Order
reality.
submitted.
Think about a future where every student, client, citizen, and customer experiences the best service possible. And your people? Well, now they're free to focus on the work that matters most. All you have to do is bring your dream. Imagine that. What if?
Overtime's about understanding what just happened in the markets that day and preparing for tomorrow. I'm looking to talk to sophisticated investors, beginning investors. I'm always on.
Closing Bell Overtime, weekdays 4 Eastern and streaming on CNBC.
This one.
Order submitted.
I'm about to pick now. Winner is gonna be whoever this guy is. Let me see. He got points in. He got 14 points.
The average dog wins to 10. That's
Thank you, went up.
summer swings.
Order filled.
You don't think that's long enough.
709.
That's why our
Order canceled.
is pre-portioned just for your dog. Because a dog in a healthy weight.
Order submitted.
Is it running?
Major average is not far from some session lows. Defense stocks, though, are rising following Israel's strike on Iran. RTX shares record high at the open. Wolf highlighting that name, and L3 Harris this morning as picks, citing, quote, relatively cleaner results of late and greater exposure to weapons needs if there is a further expansion of the conflict. They've not all traded, guys, in tandem for the year to date. RTX up 25 for the year, but Lockheed, for example, has been hobbled by some other issues, basically flat on the year so far.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise, I think, that you'd have defense stocks higher. I'm just looking at some of the consumer discretionary stocks, which are lower. Travel-related names are the flip side of that trade today, getting, 1%, 2%, 3% moves for the cruise lines,
Thank you.
the airlines, the hotel companies, and questions ultimately about, I think, the consumer, depending on how long this oil spike lasts and whether that's going to eventually be a headwind.
Yeah. And even got some NRF consumer spending numbers for May, 0.2 versus a prior 0.9. So there already was sort of a nascent slowdown in progress.
Retail sales next week.
Yeah. Worth noting that oil is well off the highs of the session now, about 5.6%. When it comes to defense, also, I think of all the private companies that are out there now, Anduril and any number of other companies relatively early in their gestation, but certainly are going to be potentially beneficiaries of the new phase.
And not private, but Palantir also.
Yeah.
You got to look there.
And then I just mentioned, Oracle shares up another 5.5%, guys. That's a 19% move since earnings on Wednesday.
Re-rating.
Yeah.
Re-rating.
Good Father's Day, David.
Thank you, and to you, Carl, and to you.
Coming up on Money Movers, Wharton School Professor Siegel on the market volatility as stocks do come off the worst levels of the session. Don't go anywhere.
Savings options for Zepbound, regardless of insurance coverage. You could pay as little as $25 with the Zepbound savings card. No insurance coverage? Get the Zepbound 2.5 milligram vial for $3.49 a month. Discover the weight loss you could be bound for. Go to saveonzepbound.com today.
Zepbound means change. For adults with obesity to help lose weight and keep it off.
Zepbound can help adults lose up to 48 pounds. And some lost over 58 pounds.
It's changing what I believe is possible when it comes to weight loss.